Are there any additional comments from council members before we have Sylvia continue through her admin report? Okay, Sylvia, if you would continue through your admin report.
So that takes us to the public safety report.
Chief, would you like to give us our public safety report this evening?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening. I just have one item. I just want to thank the many residents and non-residents alike who've been sending letters, cards, baking goods, and bringing them up to the PD. I know there's some police departments that are feeling like they're estranged from their community, but we're certainly not one of them. I mean, we've had a tremendous amount of support during all the incidents that have happened post the killing in Minnesota. We are, as a result of that, there's a number of best practices regarding use of force and civil rights protections that have been coming down from the national organizations. And I just want everyone to know that as soon as they come in, we are making sure that our policies match those. So we've been busy with that. They seem to be coming down every few days, a new change in the way these things are going to be handled. So um, we're on top of that, and we've had a few incidents since this has happened where we've all gotten together and realized that as a result of talking about the new changes and how we should view these things, we've reacted differently. There's a video that at some point I'm going to show of a case that we had last week involving a mentally ill man with a machete on the side of the highway here in Sunset Valley that we handled according to the new protocols, and it just went perfect. And the video will give everyone a chance to see just how dynamic these things are and how they can go wrong. I'm working on how we're going to get the format of that video out, but I think it will show that while we're changing policies, it's more than just policies. We're actually talking and trying to really do things in a different way than we've done in the past. So that's coming in the near future. I should be able to get that video out for everybody to see just how things can go when everything is done right. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for being exactly what I would expect from our department and from a Sunset Valley Police Chief, which is you have taken both criticism and questions and support and treated them all the same. You've been very responsive to myself and residents, and I know you're also putting together a presentation that will capture all of the very specific requests that have come in that relate to specific policies, and even just, things that relate to what we're seeing in national and even City of Austin council meetings. And so you're going to put that together and create a presentation. I believe you're going to let public safety see it first so that they can let you know if there's anything else that needs to be added to it, and then it will also come to council, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Great. And that way we all get the benefit of the same questions and same answers.
Yes.
And then the only other thing I'd like to add to everything you just said is that Sunset Valley residents, if you don't already know, the starting point for our police department, we are a tiny city, but the starting point for our department already was leaps and bounds beyond so many departments right now. We already embraced community policing, which is something that all departments should do to every extent they possibly can. And so, Chief, you're diving headfirst into making more changes and being open to any and all changes necessary, but you already were at a starting point that was ahead of so many departments.
Yes, I mean there's not a department out there that doesn't say it's a community policing department, but I mean this department is part of the community, and I don't think the residents would have it any other way. I've never seen residents that just if they have an opinion or a suggestion, they don't hesitate to let us know. And I mean, really the residents' expectations of us is probably what has made this department what it is. I don't think residents here would accept anything less. So we're just doing what we have to do, really.
Well, thank you, and thank you to the entire police department. And Sylvia, thank you. Sylvia, do we have a public works report this evening?
Yes, it's on the screen, Carolyn.
She may not be able to unmute. There you go. Carolyn, you have the floor.
Carolyn?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. There you go. Mayor and Council, thank you for tonight. The only thing I wanted to highlight for the meeting is that by the end of the week, you should be receiving a postcard in the mail that will direct you to the annual drinking water quality report. That's something that we have to send out every year, just letting everybody know. It's listed on the report as a consumer confidence report, and you should be receiving that in the mail to be able to see what the quality of the drinking water is like in the city.
Was that it for your report this evening, Carolyn?
Yes, that's the only thing I wanted to highlight right now.
Thank you. Council members, if you have any additional questions or comments for any of the reports that we've just gone over, Mayor's Report, Admin, Public Safety, and Public Works, speak now. We are about to move on. That brings us to our next item, which is council consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Do we have a motion to approve anything on consent this evening?
Councilmember Rosengarten has her hand up.
Councilmember Rosengarten, you are self-muted. You have the floor.
I move to approve agenda item number 5, June 2nd and June 10th meeting minutes, agenda item number 8, and agenda item number 9.
We have a motion to approve on consent items number 5, 8, and 9. Councilmember Gonzalez, actually, sorry, we had a handful of hands pop up. Councilmember Gonzalez, would you like to remove any of those items from the possible consent list or suggest anything for addition? And it looks like you are self-muted.
We need to remove 9 because it's not a clear enough action item.
Got it. So it sounded like maybe you were speaking before I heard you. I got remove 9. Were you good with keeping 5 and 8 for approval on consent?
I am.
Would you offer your second?
I'd be happy to offer a second if she will remove 9. So that's fine.
Well, you don't have to get for removal. You don't have to get
that's fine.
agreement.
That's fine.
So
that's
it's been
fine.
removed.
Yes, second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve on consent items number 5 and 8. Councilmember Gonzalez, is there anything else that you would like to add to that list?
I don't believe so, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Reitz, is there anything that you'd like to say to the 2 items that are currently on the consent list, which is 5 and 8?
Yes, I wanted to make a comment on 8.
So would you like to remove it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so 8 has been removed. We now have only item number 5. Councilmember Reitz, is there anything else that you'd like to add for consideration?
No.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellett, did you want to remove item number 5 from consent, or would you like to add anything else?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez, your hand is still up. Is it because I just forgot to remove it, or did you need to add something?
You forgot to remove it, Mayor. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Council members, we now have a motion and a second to approve on consent item number 5, which are approval of the minutes from the June 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting and the June 10th, 2020 special called meeting. Last call for council members, if there's any comments or questions for that. And if you would please cast your vote via chat. And if you can't, submit it to the city administrator via text. And Sylvia, if you would please then read back the votes by council member once you receive them. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Okay. Councilmember Gonzalez, aye. Councilmember Reeds, yes. Councilmember Ellett, aye. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Council members, our next item this evening is item number 6, but because we have a time certain that was to start at 6:30, I'm going to skip item number 6 and move to our time certain item. We will come back to number 6 after we are done with the marketing presentations and any of the items related to those presentations. So that brings us now to item number 7, presentation, discussion, and possible award of the marketing RFP number April 2020 to a marketing firm. And tonight we have 3 firms that will be presenting. And Sylvia, were you able to, and actually never mind, I just changed it. So each group will be given 15 minutes. They certainly don't have to use all of that if they don't want it. It is really just meant to be a way for us to keep things on some sort of sensible time track this evening. We will then follow up with approximately 15 minutes of questions, prioritizing council members first, and then moving to residents and any others who are in attendance after council members. And because that will only be a 15-minute block, if we move into residents, I anticipate that you will only get one shot. So if you have things you want to say, anticipate that you'll need to get them all in the first time that you are called on. And Sylvia, do you have the ability to look through and confirm if we do actually have all of our CED members here this evening? I'll give you a minute to.
The chair, vice chair, and all with the exception of 3 members.
Who is not here that's from that committee?
Ross Ponder, Roger Edmondson, and Aneshka Carmona.
Okay, great. And so for those that are here this evening, and then also for the 3 that aren't here, I do absolutely want to recognize the CED committee. They worked very hard to help us stay on track. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, I expect the same from our council this evening. So the goal this evening is to select a committee. To select a firm. So the idea is that we will go through these and that council will then select. Now, past selection, I imagine that there could be certainly at least one, if not more, meetings where we are finalizing contract details, including the budget that council will allocate to this contract. It is not expected that we would iron through all of that this evening. Tonight really is about selecting the primary firm that we would like to move forward with to have those contract discussions. Before we start with the first firm, Penny or Phil, was there anything that either one of you wanted to add? I know that Penny, you had sent me a letter at one point today from you, but I don't want to assume that you want me to read that in. And so I also would look to Councilmember Ellett as the liaison to the CED committee to see if there's anything else either of you would like to add before we start. Councilmember Ellett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Really not. I think you said it. The CED committee spent a considerable amount of time. I think each committee member, spent somewhere between 6 to 8 hours reviewing all the proposals. And then the CED committee met, went through it, each one spent 15 minutes on each one again, collecting all the thoughts and the reviews that happened. Then after that, each Each committee member was then asked to rank each one. The ranks were then totaled and was submitted to the city administrator. They're there for her record. You can see who they selected first, second, and third. And so it was, as you said, a thorough process. I want to thank the CED committee. There was a lot of input. There was also a representative there from the Arts Commission who gave some very, very good input and was part of, provided some good questions and some good thought processes. So I want to thank everybody involved. They did an excellent job. And hopefully tonight, we've got 3 good candidates here. I think it's more important for me to be quiet and listen to their presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and the Arts Commission Representative Ruth Piper, who also has served many years in the past on CED, she's also here this evening. And so certainly for those members and Ruth this evening, when we get, certainly before council takes any action, if you all feel like there are questions we have failed to ask, please make sure to raise your hand so I can get you all to help council. So the way that this will work is, Sylvia, I'm not sure what instructions or what priority, how you've picked who will be first. So what I will do is allow you to introduce each of the firms. And when they take the mic and get situated, and I know that they have their whole team that they want to have hot mics and they have their presentation up, that is when I will start the clock. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to make sure that they're comfortable and ready. And so if you would please introduce the first firm.
Thank you, Mayor. We just went alpha order, ampersand, Canales, Augustine, and residents. I have their presentations on the screen, so I will be jumping through. For ampersand and Canales, I see Cindy Montgomery and Jose Canales on. So I would ask that they share their camera and also make sure that they have a hot mic. So Cindy, and I just unmuted you. The mayor had you muted, sorry. And Jose.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, you were muted. I didn't see that.
No worries.
No problem. Can you see us?
I can see Jose and I can see Brian.
Okay, let me make sure that our webcam is working again. It's been off and then on again. Okay, you see us now.
And, yes, and Sylvia, just since we are getting presenters, could you turn the cameras off for anybody other than the people presenting?
Okay.
Hi, so I see 3 people on camera. Is this your whole team that you want presenting this evening?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. This is all of us.
Okay, great. And what is on the screen is what should be on the screen?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, good. Great. So I will go ahead and start your timer now. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you so much. We are absolutely thrilled to be here to spend a little time getting to know you better and to tell you a little bit about ourselves. I am Cindy Montgomery. I'm the CEO of the Ampersand Agency. And with me, I have a partner, Jeff Montgomery, also with Ampersand. You can see Brian Thompson there, our creative director. And last but certainly not least, Jose Canales, our creative partner, who also happens to be a resident, as many of you know, of Sunset Valley, and he's joining us from his home over on Reese Street, just a couple blocks from City Hall. So, all right, Sylvia, we'll get started here. I did want to mention before we go to the next slide that I realize there are probably some people listening in that were not on the committee and not on the council and haven't necessarily seen all the details in the RFP. So if anybody wants to know a little bit more about us, I would highly encourage you to check out the websites listed there on screen. You can get a glimpse at more of our work at ampersandagency.com or canalesco.com. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Celia, can you take us to the next slide?
There's about a 1-second delay, so yes, there you go.
Okay, awesome. Great. All right, so just a real quick overview. We are a full service, purpose-based branding agency. And I would be more than happy in the Q&A to get into detail on exactly what that means and how it's may be different. I think it's important that you know that we have a deep level of experience in both retail and destination marketing, but probably more importantly, we live here, we work here, we shop here. We are not just potential agency partners, we're also your targets. We spend quite a bit of time actually in Sunset Valley and we love it. In fact, our office is just over the hill at 360 and Mopac South. We can literally see the out-of-home billboards from our large conference room window at 290 and Westgate Boulevard, so 5 minutes away. We have been an advertising agency full service from day one. We've been in business for more than 25 years. We only have one office. It's located right here in Austin, Texas, and always pretty much has been. So let's go on to, I think, the next slide, please. Okay, so I don't think the residents of Sunset Valley need to be told that they have something special and unique. I believe we all know that. It really is a hidden gem. It's a city within a city. It's next to one of the most vibrant cities in the United States. There's so much to offer, and I think we all, those of us who don't live there, wish that we could enjoy the kind of amenities and low taxes and other great benefits that the residents of Sunset Valley have. And so we wanted to focus on what we think the residents and all the good people of Sunset Valley need, and that is first and foremost for sales tax revenues to go back up so that they can continue to enjoy these exceptional services that you offer and the quality of life that they've come to expect. So with that in mind, one of the questions you asked, how will you capture the unique selling point of Sunset Valley? Well, let's go on to the next slide, Sylvia. There's a process that every agency has because you have to have one, and I'm not going to bore you with that. In the RFP, we outlined it completely, but I'll just say as an overview, it's 3 phases, 10 steps, starting with discovery, a bunch of research and exercises, and then in creative execution. But the big thing I wanted to really focus on here is the 3 big questions that process leads us to at the end, which really sets us up for a strategic framework that develops and delivers the right kind of creative campaigns that motivate people and inspire them to come and spend time and money with Sunset Valley. So really, we have this process, but we want to get to these 3 things. What really makes Sunset Valley the better place to shop, the preferred destination over any other? What can't our competitors replicate? That in and of itself is a unique selling proposition because things that can be copied, things that can be duplicated, things that can be confused in messaging by competitors who might be nearby, like Westlake or Hill Country Galleria or even Brody Oak Shopping Center. You know, those are things that we want to try to separate and strengthen for Sunset Valley. And then, of course, are we really aligning with what consumers are looking for? Are we tapping into their need states? Are we tapping into their what we call human truths, which means making emotional connections with them and really putting the things that they care about most front and center so that they're attractive to them and they can respond to them. And that goes for both residents and non-residents. So this process, which we call finding your truth and telling the world about it, we refer to it internally as dynamic insight. And like I said, 3 phases, 10 steps, but really that creative development piece that takes people and really grabs their attention, makes them sit up and take notice, and appeals to all stakeholders is what that process is all about. So let's go on to the next slide.
You'll see for your second question on the next slide, you'll see that we understand that business owners and landlords are really crucial stakeholders. So we want to learn from them and then also keep them engaged on an ongoing process. So We would start by doing some research with one-on-one interviews and a follow-up survey to really get their insights. And then most importantly is building on those insights by grouping the retailers into tiers and then creating a promotional plan for each of those tiers. And that would be based on featuring them in different ads and newsletter content, but also creating events that drive traffic to that retailer and other retailers and properties at large. So imagine, if you will, doing a wine walk with Total Wine, where you visit different properties to try different tastes. Or we could have Camp Gladiator come out and do a live fitness class in front of Academy Sports in the parking lot there. And those are events that are in addition to the great events that people already know and love, like the Art Walk, for example. So it's really about getting their insights and then really learning from them on an ongoing basis so that they're really an engaged partner. I'll hand it back to Cindy for question 3.
Okay, so you guys also asked a question about the $12,000 that we had set aside and labeled as the production budget. And I just think that's just a minor point of clarification here. I just want to make sure that we were being clear. That $12,000 that we recommended was only for third-party vendors. So literally everything else that you would need, digital and social assets and ads and different designs that would be created during the course of the year for however many campaigns we need to do, that's all included in the agency fee. So the $12,000 that we carved out was not something that the agency would do, but something that we might hire a photographer or a videographer, for example, to do. And I think in our mind, the most important thing is to get you some custom photography, because we don't really believe that we can promote Sunset Valley is a great destination unless we show people the real Sunset Valley. So we're not a big fan of stock photography. We've got to get those lifestyle moments and those slice of life things that happen that show all the great things you can see and do. And so we really had in mind 2 photo shoots, a holiday themed one and a spring and summer lifestyle one. And then if there are some additional small expenses like posters or little print pieces for maybe co-op programs with retailers, it could come out of that budget, but could also very much be involved in a retail co-op program where it pays for itself. So we can go into this deeper if you guys have more questions, but we just want to make sure y'all understood. That was everything else is covered in the agency fee. So. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to talk to us a little bit about your last 2 questions.
So one of your questions asks, tell us more about how you measure success. That initial upfront process, if we're fortunate enough to be hired, is working through you in dynamic insight to learn more about you, your customers, your stakeholders, and to develop the message. I have a background in research in media, and I will be poring over the things that you pay attention to, the numbers that are important to you, the tax revenues likely, and the bed tax from the hotels. Those numbers will help us establish some high-reaching goals. And so 2 goals that will be primary as part of your campaign will be to establish you as a destination, but also to get your tax revenues to recover and get them back up to what they were to pre-COVID-19 as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. And then once that happens, to actually exceed those numbers over the next 6 to 12 months. And so I spent a lot of time with your numbers and would like to look at the last 3 to 5 years so we can see patterns and nuances. The 2 or 3 things that are going to be important to us, especially early on, to drive retail sales are going to be traffic and repeat visitors. And then from there, we build out a media plan that will relate to the next question. But let me say, we don't just put a plan in place. We put a plan in place with goals that we collaborate with you to establish so everything is clear and transparent about how we'll move these tax revenue numbers. And so that media plan, whether it's billed out in monthly installments or quarterly installments, will be worked through with you. All the goals and the handful of metrics that we pay attention to will all be very clear up front before we pull the trigger and actually spend $1 of your media. So the next question, if we can move on to that, and the final question is, how will you leverage digital platforms to understand and engage our audience? We can go to the next slide. So this leads right into the media plan that we would put together and have the goals and the metrics all, again, very much upfront and clear and transparent. One of the things that we've come to rely on over the last handful of years is what's called device ID technology. We all have these phones, the smartphones, and every time someone walks into a retail store and has this on them, we can track you. So we actually have built a database for Sunset Valley. And over the last year, there's 200,000 people that have gone to one of your destinations in Sunset Valley. And these are unique device IDs and have shopped at one of your stores. That's 200,000 out of roughly just over 2 million people in the greater Austin area. That's a beginning place for how we start to look on who are your core customers. And let me say, once we have access to this device ID, we can cross promote ads to not only the mobile device, but to a laptop, desktop, and any other devices they have in the household where they reside. So this opens the door to quite a bit of information that we make part of our process. And again, it's clear and transparent, available to all the stakeholders in the community. Along with that, we can not only look at your own customers, we can look at people that went to Westgate or the Galleria or the Belterra or Brody Oaks, but had not come onto the Sunset Valley Village property. So then we can do some things that are called conquesting, where we move them over to one of your outlets and make sure that we are not only getting increased traffic with your own core customers, but we're attracting new people to your properties. And then finally, the handful of measurements on the next slide that we will pay attention to and make sure there are some goals set and that we're on the way to moving your tax revenues would involve the following. I'm more than happy to answer some questions on some of the jargon that I'm going to mention here, but we will look at gross impressions, which alone means little to me with the exception of the reach and the frequency, the cost per point, the cost per acquisition to move people over to shop with you as opposed to Belterra, Galleria, etc. Engagement, clicks, click-through rate, and then the conversion rate on conquesting. All of that is reviewed in monthly reports, and then we do a quarterly report so that we can stay on track and in sync with moving the numbers. With that said, I'm going to hand it off to our creative partner, Jose Canales.
Yeah, I just think the thing that makes us a great agency partner is the same thing that makes Sunset Valley such a great place to live, to work, and to play. And that is that we're people who generally care about our neighbors. And as somebody who personally lives here and works here and shops here, plays here, and really just has skin in the game, it's important to me that this partnership succeed. And what gives me confidence in the success of this potential partnership is our expertise in the matters of branding, marketing, paired with our unique familiarity with the city of Sunset Valley and the issues that are important to it. And so we appreciate your consideration, Council. And Cindy, I'll let you close this out, or we may be out of time.
Yeah, I think we're ready to open up for questions, if you guys would like. We definitely have a couple of things we want to make sure that we've been clear about, and so you guys let us know.
Thank you. So what I'll do is I'll open it for questions, and again, I'm going to start the timer, so we'll have 15 minutes. I will prioritize council members, and certainly for our presenters, included in your answers, if you realize there's something where we're either confused or there's something you need to add, make sure that you utilize that 15 minutes in a way that is most advantageous to you as well. So I will start with the first hand up, Councilmember Medicus.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go back to your point about the unique, you call it a unique selling proposition. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is the unique selling point for our city over and above the shopping district. So I want us to be identified as more than just a place to shop. And can you speak a little bit to how you would approach that? And my second question would be, you mentioned that the media is all included, the design and that includes the placement too. I just want to make sure the initial media buy.
Let me answer your second question first. So in the budget that we submitted, we felt like you really needed to set aside about $100,000 for media placement. So our fee was about $117, 45% of the budget, another 100, was dedicated specifically to making sure that we actually get the word out through the advertising plan itself. So included in the fee is all the strategy, all the design work, all the creative deliverables, with the exception of the custom photo shoots that I mentioned. And then the rest of it is media placement. So hopefully that clarifies that.
Thank you.
Sure. And then your second question, yes, about the unique selling proposition. That is a collaborative process, and that is something that we will definitely discover together. Right now, we see that there is a bigger ask on the table. And so I'm glad you really asked this question, because I think there is a big difference between what in the industry you will hear people refer to as destination marketing, which is an area of specialty that is very linked to tourism. So for example, when you see, people promoting, I don't know, Hawaii or Palm Springs or someplace with a really fancy schmancy golf resort, or Orlando for like Disney World. That type of destination marketing is very dependent upon longer term stays, overnight, a week long. People save up their money for those kind of things. And then there's a second kind of destination marketing that includes more of just beyond the destination, but also day trips and frequency of visits for everyday routine stuff. And so that's what we really see that Sunset Valley needs, is the right balance of both, the right combination of both things. And so that unique selling proposition really has to be something that speaks to both activities, something that the residents would love, and something that people who are coming there to spend dollars beyond the resident population would find to be exciting and true and reflective of what Sunset Valley really is. And that's a creative solution, that creative problem to solve. So it does absolutely come out of the process. It is not strictly retail driven. In fact, I would say the thing that probably makes this process and this challenge for Sunset Valley very unique is that we feel that it's all three things. It's building your brand, it's having retail programs and incentives, and it's developing and evolving the destination that you want to be over time. How can we make you a destination in ways that work right now, but ultimately, how can we also make you a destination a year from now, 2 years from now, and so on. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Am I audible?
You are.
Thank you. So yes, similar to that was actually my question that you were answering, and Councilmember Medicus, it was something that we wanted. In my perfect world, we would have done the economic development piece first. And in fact, we did approve that, but for some reason that didn't happen in that order. And so I do think that it's very important to say who we are, and not just for the next 2 or 3 years, but for the next 10 years. So it's hard because we're doing the marketing before we're doing that piece, but given the times, we have to just deal. And so I appreciate that, but I think that that's something that's really important is looking at what we're going to look like 10 years out. I really like what you guys have to offer. I'm very impressed with your presentation and very appreciative of all the hard work that CED did to go through all the people who did this. But tell me again, what makes you've seen the presentations, I'm going to give you a shot to say what makes you different than the competition. Just to let you elaborate on that a little bit longer.
Yeah. Brian, do you want to take that?
the key difference that I see why I love working for Ampersand is how well-rounded the agency is, not only in our talent and expertise, but also in our client base. We don't just work with one particular type of client for kind of a narrow, blinder focus. We work with a lot of retail clients, a lot of packaged good clients, so that we really have a really healthy understanding of the power of a purposeful brand. When we say purpose, we mean like, what's your higher truth? What do you stand for? And that's really what resonates with an audience. And I think that goes directly to the question that you just answered about. It's not just about driving traffic today, but how do you build something that matters for the long term?
Well, I'll add to that developing a brand is something you do once and you do it the right way, because you don't change your brand over the life of it. In fact, most of the brands we work with, like Cavender's and Total Wine and Academy, you know, they have carved out a position, and they may have refreshed their creative over time, but they didn't change who they fundamentally are or what they fundamentally stand for. And Sunset Valley still, I believe, needs to articulate that. You guys may have defined it. I'm not sure that I've ever seen it come through in an ad campaign in a way that made me go, aha, I totally get what is unique and special about that place as not just a destination, but as a brand.
Yeah, I really appreciate your point about not rebranding twice. That was certainly very important.
Yes.
And I would add that my background in research, I've worked with a number of municipalities and counties throughout the state of Texas. But over a 10-year period, my role was strategist and researcher for the city of Austin, or city of Round Rock, during their growth period for 10 years to help develop quality of life, develop the brand, and drive how the community would grow in an appropriate way and attract the right types of folks to come to the community, shop there, experience it, etc. So we're quite familiar with this community and have extensive history in what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say, seconding Jeff, like I would think is the biggest differentiator is the familiarity with Sunset Valley, with the city of Austin, growing up here my whole life, and then our expertise in branding. I mean, you put those two things together, and that's a very unique combination to an agency you happen to be talking to.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We know who we're up against and what they're offering. So.
Great. Councilmember Ellett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, team, for presenting. When I saw the original presentation, I was impressed with how you covered the topic of COVID-19, and that resonated well with me. I have three questions. I'll give you the three up front. You talk about collecting data from traffic and repeat visitors, and I'm saying something blunt, and please take it in the right. They are not as important to me or to the city as the people that don't come here. Those are much more important. And so the question would be, how do you attract those people? How do you research those people, number one? The second question is, I agree with you that consumer research is important, and I'm confused why on the original proposal, consumer research was listed as an optional extra for $55,000. And I'm a little confused here because I think it is important, like you just said. And to me, that's not like getting a scratch-resistant bed put on a pickup truck as an optional extra. It seems to me it is a basic tenet of putting this together. So that would be the second question I have. Why initially was it an optional extra? And then the third one is a question, and I agree with Councilmember Gonzalez, how critical an economic development plan is. And I'd like you to comment, because I think you know who the other competitors are, and I think we'll be asking them the same question. What experience do you have in economic development, and why should we pick you for your economic development over the others, I guess, experience? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll set up the first question, and then I'm going to let Jeff jump in and add to this. So one of the things about device ID targeting is that once you have someone who's come to the household, you can reach other members of their household who may not be coming. You can also build what's called look-alike audiences, and especially in social media, there are so many different targeting capabilities that once you kind of identify the type of consumers and visitors and people who want to stay and spend time in a hotel or visiting family or here for another event like ACL or something, it is very easy to then expand that footprint. So when we say that we have a database of 200,000, that is just a drop in the ocean. That is absolutely what I would call seed money, so to speak. It's a great asset that we can then build on to extend our reach. But the reason we want to start with something like that is because it gives us profiling data, geographic data, and lots of other demographic data that allows us to then expand our reach responsibly to qualified targets who are likely to act on your ad. We don't want to waste your money and end up spending that on targets that won't respond to the ads, because we have limited media funds to work with. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and so the device ID targeting, you can also target other competitors to Sunset Valley Village and Brody Lane shopping that don't come to your community.
Right.
So we can identify and target those people that are within a radius of 10 to 15 miles. Most retailers will tell you their sales all take place within 10 to 15 miles. You can expand beyond that, but you got to have the budget to go beyond that. So we can build audiences of folks who don't shop with you guys and target them. But I will tell you, in the next 3 to 6 months, that 200,000 database of people who have come to Sunset Valley, but for one reason or another, because of COVID-19, have dropped off and may be doing some things online, they're golden for you, and you need to get them back in the saddle and in your community. Then I would reach out further.
Yeah. And then to answer your second question about the extra research cost. So let me just say, we debated that vigorously, but our dynamic insight process does include a research process of its own. And we think that by talking to the stakeholders, interviewing the business owners, managers, retailers, that we're going to get a lot of insight without necessarily having to do qualitative and quantitative right now. We feel like, given the budget that you gave us, that it would be much more important to spend the money right now getting things rolling and getting the right campaign together, which we can test and do different things along those lines to make sure that we're getting the right word out. But
here's the bottom line: that 55,000 would come out of your media.
Yeah.
So your media portion at 45% of your $230,000 budget would drop down to probably around 20%. That's not enough to accomplish any goal for the entire year.
Yeah. Yeah. We really need a healthier budget if we want to really do all that kind of research. But like I said, our dynamic insight process includes a research process as well. So we're very confident that we can get there with that. And then your last question about economic development plan. Yes, we feel that green spaces, maybe a concert venue, ways to kind of make the experience a little more cohesive, get the profile for the city up in terms of awareness and things like that. That's all very, very important to get people to come and linger and stay and do what you want them to do. That's a critical element. And you kind of said it's cart before the horse. So we'd be very interested to know what you guys have thought about, what was in the original plan, what you kind of envision going forward, because we would love to tease that and start by creating interim events like the art walk and then maybe a festival or two, doing some things to get people over there that are really attractive to them, also with the idea of aligning that with that future vision of what you're willing to put funds behind to develop. And then as far as our experience with economic development, we have worked with so many different little projects and cities. It's all over the map. Jose recently did exactly the kind of project that you're asking for Sunset Valley for Pigeon Forge in Tennessee. Did you want to speak to that, Jose?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very similar ask, similar project where we just rebranded Pigeon Forge, not necessarily from a identity standpoint, but more from a campaign standpoint, in driving traffic for different seasons of the year. So that included a campaign of like tone of voice, photography, and illustration, iconography, signage, email campaigns, digital banners, all sorts of communications that targeted their customer and draw them to the area. And that's just one that we did this year.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I just want to check on time. We could give you some more examples, but how are we doing on time, or are there other questions?
Well, we're at the end, so let me do one. Are there any council members that want to ask a question that have not been able to? Okay, and so we are out of time. So what I would actually ask at this point before we start the next presentation would be just to give you guys a few minutes to wrap up and certainly to touch on anything that you think might be important before we move on.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much. We really responded to this RFP because we feel that we know the community and the surrounding communities and the target audiences that you're going after extremely well. And the reason that we know that is because we already work with a lot of your anchors. We see their data, we know what their numbers are, we know what's going on right now in terms of revenues and businesses and the post-COVID world, and how budgets and money and people and things have shifted to e-commerce and online shopping. And we're just immersed in it. And we saw when your RFP came out and before all of this happened with COVID, that it was an opportunity to work with a place that we're very fond of and very familiar with. And so it would be an honor for us to help you. And we really do believe that we can help. So we thank you for your consideration. We hope that our information has been valuable to help you with in your process. And we really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you guys would, if possible, stay around so that when we finish up and we get to council wrap up, I actually do anticipate that council is going to want to tap into our other experts to see if there's any questions that didn't get asked. So John Popola, I saw that you had your hand up. I definitely want to get your questions. So if the presenters would please stick around. And with that, Sylvia, would you get the next one queued up?
Yes, the next one is the Augustine and Company. I'm going to ask, there's Deborah. Is there any other members of your team, Deborah, that are on? Oh, there's Susan.
Okay, sorry, I think you enabled that. Yes, there are a few more of us this afternoon, or this evening rather.
Somebody has really, really bad feedback.
Why don't we stay muted, team, until we speak?
Deborah. So if you're trying to call on the phone and the computer, it's going to give you that feedback. Or turn off one of those mics.
I only have the one mic. I don't know. What do you guys think? Never had that issue before.
Another option could be, if you're on the computer, if you can see where the audio options are. If you switch to phone call, which means you still can view screen, but it will allow you to, which is what I'm doing right now. So I can still see my computer, I'm using my computer, but my audio is through the phone call. And Sylvia, if she can maybe troubleshoot that, would you make sure that everybody else has their mics on?
Yes.
And then, so for all the presenters, your mics will be hot. You can still self-mute if you need to cover up the dogs that are barking in other rooms and whatnot. And Sylvia, we'll give Deborah a few minutes just to troubleshoot that. It'll be worth the wait. And actually, while we're doing that, just so that we're not wasting time, council members, I'm sort of looking ahead at how we're going to manage time this evening. At 9 o'clock, I will need a motion to continue the meeting until 10. If you all have the ability to stay with it till 10. But I'm not going to move past 9 unless council actually motions and votes to do so. But for the sake of time, I am willing to, if there is a motion to, and Sylvia, if you don't have any opposition to it, to move to table until the next meeting, item number 10 and 11. Sylvia, is there any reason we couldn't move those two items to the next meeting?
No, I mean, no.
Council members, could I have two hands, a motion and a second to table items, and those are both items sponsored by myself, items number 10 and 11 to the next meeting. Councilmember Medicus. Councilmember Ellett, you both have hot mics. Councilmember Ellett, would you motion to move those two items?
Yes, I would make a motion to move those two items.
And Councilmember Medicus, would you second that?
Yes, second.
Thank you. Councilmembers, if you would please cast your vote. This is a motion to table until the next meeting, items number 10 and 11, and that is the report on Sunset and Jones intersection drainage issue with council deliberation and possible action. And item number 11, review and discuss the current resident complaint process and possibly adopt a resident complaint form for public use. That will allow anybody who might be here just for those two items to not stick around until 9:55 to watch us table them. Councilmembers, all those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please read the vote back to us once you have it.
Okay, Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes.
Thank you. That is a unanimous vote. And so thank you guys. Now we all feel better about the little delay because we just cleared some stuff off of our agenda. So let's see, can we test Deborah's audio again and see?
Deborah, you're self-muted on one of those items.
Okay, can you hear me via the phone?
I can hear you now.
Via the phone. Okay, perfect. I thought I was muting on the computer so you could hear me on the phone.
Before we get started, would we all be able to test?
Yeah, Carrie, can you tell me, tell me if your whole team is on, visible, and if their audio is working.
This is a test for me. I think it sounds okay on my end.
Hi there. And test for me, it's all good on my end.
Hi there. All good.
Okay. I was the problem child.
Okay, we'll start the timer.
All right. Great, thank you so much. So I'm Debbie Augustine, the founder of Augustine and Executive Creative Director. I'll introduce the rest of the team, although they just did their mic checks. Susan Begay is with Intercom. She's our very dynamic media partner on this project. And Terry Cooper is our government relations expert. And then we have one of our best and brightest account directors, Elizabeth Zerker. And Michael Mezzanotti is our VP of Creative. So that's the team you're going to be hearing from today. And we actually thought we were going to be showing the presentation. So we have a lot of information in here that we wanted to make sure we shared with you. But we're going to be going quickly over some of those slides and just really be sensitive to the 15-minute time allotment. So we too have been around 25 years, so that was interesting. Ampersand and us have been around the same amount of time. We're a staff of 50, and we're based right here in Texas. And our expertise is not only in tourism and economic development and retail and shopper marketing, but we do a lot of master plan marketing and real estate, which I think is also very relevant to what your location is all about. And we have a lot of proven results, and we hope to bring that to you. So with that, our next slide is basically a snapshot of our disciplines in-house. So we bring you a very holistic approach where we can really be comprehensive and stretch your dollars as far as we humanly possibly can, because there's a lot of efficiencies that comes with having all of this under one roof, so to speak. I'll let you look at those on your own, and we'll move on to the next slide, which is just basically sharing with you that our media partner Intercom is quite a powerhouse in the industry, and we'll be bringing a ton of strategy and innovation and media buying power to the table as well. And their next slide is a snapshot similar to the one before of all of the disciplines that they handle. And there we go. And with that introduction, because I know you've seen it all about us already before, we're going to jump right into the questions.
All right, guys. Yep, I'll walk you guys through question number 1 and how we are going to capture the unique selling point of Sunset Valley. So really how we, how we capture those selling points is through our creative process. And again, I know you've heard a lot about creative processes. Ours really seeks to do the heavy lifting for you, making it very simple and plug and play with you guys. So, in order to capture that unique selling point, we're going to definitely, uncover that true essence of the destination itself and make sure that that is resonating with locals and it's authentic to the destination's offering. If those things are misaligned and it's not being supported by local stakeholders, we find that those aren't the most successful brands. So our process really seeks to engage your local stakeholder audience and the community, and really have that be an ownable brand for them that really speaks to the destination, so that we could then speak to our visitors. So with this process, we take those learnings and we clearly define those selling points, but not just define them, but really relate them back to the audiences and what resonates them. We want those reasons to believe, their consumer journey, the calls to action, to all be very concise and clear to an audience group. And next slide, please. Okay, we could go one more. I'm kind of running through this pretty quick for time's sake, so I'll skip around a little bit. But on this slide, I did want to take a brief moment to dive into the discovery process a little bit more, and really that is the foundation and the basis for our creative messaging strategy. And during this phase, we focus on why before how. Why are we doing things? And this is really the strategy. It's not just creative for creative sake, but everything has a rhyme or reason. So how do we get to that? Right off the bat, we start with an in-market familiarization tour, and we really think that we bring that fresh perspective to the destination, where we could go into the destination in market for a certain amount of time and experience it like a visitor would experience it. We gain invaluable insights from these familiarization tours that really help us paint the picture of what somebody who might not know about Sunset Valley can expect, and then we start crafting that story from that part. During that time, we'll conduct stakeholder meetings, and those could be with groups or with one-on-ones. Really, that meeting provides invaluable information for us. Talking to the experts in the community, which is yourselves, learning your goals, your missions, and really helping to sell that through our process and through to the client. Research and analytics, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, But again, looking through what you have, any analytics, doing any brand audits of what we have to work with, and then conducting our own research is also in this. Looking at competitors, where's those white spaces, those territories we can own as a brand, and how do we fit into that landscape and disrupt that landscape to attract people to Sunset Valley. Industry insights is another thing we touch on, and that, really right now, you'll see a lot of post-COVID type of insights with safety type messaging, getting people to feel comfortable with, what their new normal, or help define their new normal, and how travel is affected by COVID is a huge thing right now. So all of that will be taken into account with the messaging and the brand as we move forward to attract visitors. And then lastly, those audience personas are a super important piece. I mean, those really, we seek to define who we're talking to, who we're going after, their mindsets, their planning habits, their inspirations when planning travel. So when those are all put together, that really allows us to develop those unique selling points and align them with all of these things to resonate tactically and emotionally to the audience. And again, I just kind of went through these points briefly. These are a little bit more in depth, so if you want to reference them later in your packets, I just touched on these. And on the next slide, we're going to show some examples here. Debbie's going to walk you through of how we deployed this process to really similar destinations and had great success with them.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, so we really do consider ourselves experts and masters at taking undiscovered or overlooked areas and putting them on the map. And so we have 3 examples here. I'm going to touch on 2 for the sake of time. And the first one is Torrance, California. So it's really kind of a stepsister to Los Angeles. It's more of a bedroom community, and the general sentiment was, why would I ever want to go there? And what we found through our discovery was that there was an emerging craft brew scene. There's an undiscovered beach. There was an exciting ethnic restaurants, and one of the largest shopping centers in the U.S. So there actually was some there, and through our process, we were able to get to that nugget. And our positioning around that was the idea about being, are you in on this secret, on this hidden gem that is really another side of Southern California that you may not know about. And so our creative messaging actually had a call to action built in it saying, are you in? So are you in on checking out some of these new restaurants? Are you in on discovering some of these craft brews? And so it was really kind of tapping into that emotional thing about wanting to be one of the cool people that really knows about this little undiscovered area. So that was the first one. And of course, we built out robust campaigns based on that "Are you in" messaging that was filtered throughout everything that we touched. The other example is actually on the other side of Southern California, and it was the other side of where Torrance was on one side, Conejo Valley is on the other, and it had a different experience. There was no downtown core there. Again, no reason to go. And that was the general sentiment. And so what we discovered was that it was a beautiful mountain range, amazing hiking trails, restaurants, golf courses, and our unique selling point was you could really get away from the city and see another side of Southern California. Conejo was a place where you could take a moment and relax and get back to nature and slow down. And still have all of these amazing things to do and see around you. And so our positioning around that was Conejo Valley, catch your breath, because you really had an opportunity to just stop and take a moment to really enjoy everything that it had to offer. And again, another robust campaign was built out of that. So those are the 2 examples. The third one is Napa, and I'll let you discover that one on your own so that we can stay on time.
All right.
And with that, I think we're going to go to question 2. Yes.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Debbie and Mike, for kicking us off and kind of digging in on that discovery a little bit. I'm going to dig in further on how we'll acquire and incorporate all that input from the key Sunset Valley stakeholders. And we know from our experience that the best intel of any destination lies within the people that have already invested in that market and live there. So as we kind of already alluded to, our discovery process includes for ensuring we connect with the stakeholders in the best way that works for them. Whether it's those in-person meetings while we're visiting, it's group call interviews, or even the use of online surveys that can be used and designed to gather specific information, but as well as anonymous insights from any of those key targets that we want to ensure so that we know the good, the bad, and even sometimes the ugly, so that when we're ready to truly move into developing the unique selling proposition, we have all the information we need. And this is exactly what we did right down the street in Bastrop, Texas. While we immersed ourselves in Bastrop, not only to experience what it had to offer, that time was also used to gather the research we needed from the stakeholders to truly understand what had not worked with prior partners or prior marketing campaigns. The robust and well-rounded research we did fully informed all our recommendations from that initial branding strategy to taglines and to all the marketing materials we created from there. It was a very exciting day when their board voted unanimously to adopt their new campaign and tagline, "Welcome to it all." And as you can see on the next following pages, we've got a couple examples of what those surveys kind of looked like from the stakeholders and even the partners. But I'll let Carrie take over and take you through some additional examples.
Thank you. Yes, we also use this process for the economic development and importance as well. So we understand that business retention and expansion, removing any of those barriers for success, is a way to also not only attract the visitors, but also recruit those new businesses. So two programs that show our demonstrated experience in doing this is for downtown Napa. So Napa, California is known around the world for its wines. Our client, downtown Napa, just happens to be the path that you drive by to get to those famous wineries. So when we were hired as agency of record, the city center was plagued with poor online sentiments, vacant storefronts, and overall just low traffic numbers. So in working with the downtown restaurants, we created this year a culinary crawl. It was a quarterly dine around that has sold out by our Napa locals for the past 7 years straight, bringing a new revenue stream for the city. And then second, next slide, is the program Art On First. Before we even began marketing the downtown, we wanted to address those empty storefronts and the concerns voiced by the local businesses. We brought in these local artists to create art installations in the storefront windows. Not only did it transform an eyesore into an attraction, but it enhanced the shopper experience and gave those wine tasters a reason to stop in downtown. So whether it's a sip and shop or a family fun night out, these are some of the event concepts that we can bring to Sunset Valley. And then I'm just going to jump right into question 3 as well. So the city had a question around budget, and regarding budget, the short answer is yes. We are all about maximizing budgets and extending campaign messaging. In fact, we're prepared to take a reduced agency commission to increase your campaign media dollars. At the end of the day, when you think about it, why even invest in a brand at all if you don't have the media to back it up? So you've heard that we come with an exclusive national media partner, Entercom Government. This not only gives the city 25% in added value already baked into your media spend. You get the latest and most sophisticated media tactics and analytics that Susan will talk about a little bit later. And with our hypothetical plan, we're looking at more than 7 million quality targeted impressions hypothetical plan. So knowing that if we are successful in being selected, we'll work with you to revise that plan based on any identified KPIs and optimize along the way. We also come with a transparent dashboard that gives you real-time access to your media. And next, that'll be Susan.
So the digital tools, how we'll leverage our digital platforms are first, we would utilize predictive marketing to identify our audience. It's a tool that uses digital banners, video placement to find the person that is responding and taking action. So it allows us to find the right person at the right moment to deliver Sunset Valley messaging. We focus on the person, not the device, by following them through their daily journey. Predictive marketing also provides reporting on the audience, age, gender, geography, and interest, but in addition tells us what messages and images are resonating with them. And that's something we usually do at the launch of a campaign. In addition, we use an AI tool that looks at social media discussions, contextual keywords, topics, and apps that identify people that are actively searching and participating in dining out and shopping and entertainment activities. But also we can target people who are not coming to Sunset Valley and find out what their shopping habits are and target them with your messaging. And lastly, how we would reward people once they come is we would suggest geofencing your locations and serving up coupons or deals based on retail offerings in the area. And then lastly, we wrap it up with a full circle of analytics where we provide back to you what is working, optimizing the program, who is engaging, and what we think the best next steps would be. And we do this basically week by week or month by month, however we want to set up a reporting. So I'll give it back to Deb.
Yes, so just thought we would leave you with a few thoughts of why we thought we were a good fit. We're definitely local. We're here in Texas. We're specialists in marketing and placemaking at destinations of a similar size and budget. So it's right in our wheelhouse. We have the designated media partner in Intercom that has substantial buying power and pre-negotiated added value, which I think will really make an impact for your organization. And we're experts in media planning and implementation, and we have a focus on government communications, economic development, and tourism as well. So we think you guys are very cool. We think the destination has so much potential, and we would love to be a part of telling your story. And I think
Thank you.
Thank
you. Council members, do we have any questions? Councilmember Ellett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I've got a couple of comments and maybe some similarities here. First of all, I know Torrance very well. And let me just say you were very kind in your description of Torrance, which I appreciate. And then also, Jorge Valley, there's some similarities here. Torrance is surrounded by the 800-pound gorilla, which is LA. Sunset Valley is surrounded by an 800-pound gorilla. It's called Austin. You say that Corey Valley had no significant or no focal downtown. We have shopping centers. We don't have a downtown. Now, having said all that, how would you go about, or without giving any of your secrets away, how do you go about taking on those two? We have an 800-pound gorilla and we have no downtown. And we have similar stores to everybody else. So, yes, we have to bring more people here. We have to bring more new people here. And we have to bring people here that will like our stores and spend money. That's the bottom line. So I don't expect you to have an answer. I just would like you to share some thoughts on those similarities with us, if you would, please. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Mike, do you want to take that or do you want me to? Oh, you're
muted.
Mike, you're on mute.
Yep, I think I could kick it off, and then if you want to add anything, really with, you bring a good point with those destinations. With Torrance, I mean, it was very, the challenge was to carve out an identity in that landscape, which is massive, and a lot of similar offerings to the destination. And really where Torrance was, we had to kind of break that perception of, Torrance is an industrial city. It's not very visitor friendly. There's nothing to do there. And, how we do that is we take those, what are perceived weaknesses, we found out were strengths. We know that the kind of modern experiential traveler is looking for things that are off the map, off the beaten path, that are different. So we really serve that up on that project. So I think we would really seek to find, those gems with you guys and, be able to point people in that direction and really kind of carve out a white space area for you within that whole landscape. I mean, We know you're not Austin, and that that's good. There's strengths in that. There's obviously awesome selling points in that, and those are what we need to bring out.
Yes, it's about really uncovering what's so authentic to you that living there, you may not even see it, but we bring a fresh perspective that sometimes we just find these pearls and are able to elevate them to get it on the radar of the people that authenticity would appeal to. And that's where we really make the difference. On the Conejo side, that was the Torrance side. We also found that Torrance has a little beach that's very uncrowded because nobody knows it's there. So those are the things that, some might take for granted and we really leverage. Mike, do you want to kick off Conejo at all?
Yeah, Conejo was very similar in that it was, there was not a lot there, but it was a stark difference when we got into the market and really, immersed ourselves in it. It's very close to LA, about 45 minutes out, but it's very different, very far away, feeling fresh air, mountainous landscapes, a lot of outdoor activities. And then that is really combined with, world-class entertainment scenes, restaurants, culinary scenes, breweries. So it was this real undiscovered gem within the middle of the Southern California landscape that we were able to, position of, if you're tired of LA, come for the day, come for the weekend, and kind of catch your breath, get out of the hustle and bustle and relax in this area. And those two, with Torrance and with Conejo, the brands, I think it was talked about earlier about not redoing a brand twice. I think we did Conejo's brand about 8 years ago, and it's still up and running, relatively, unchanged in terms of brand voice, tone, tagline, so to speak. And we've since done campaigns that, for seasonality and whatnot. But those are brands that we've built and have stuck and have worked for many years.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Councilmember
My goodness,
Gonzalez.
we were that far. Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. I always have to push back a little bit. We have an undeveloped downtown that loops in an L, and right now it's redeveloping where AISD is dramatically transforming and looping around, and so it wraps our city, and I think it's really important for people to realize how much change we're about to hit, which is why I don't want to say we don't have a downtown, because it's an L-shaped one that starts at the Uplands, which something we'll probably happy with. Berger and this Pillow and Sunset Valley Elementary about to flip in their redevelopment within a couple of years. That will all connect and then wrap around, and eventually we'll see development all the way down to Lowe's. Eventually, because that's how that is. So it's good to see what that corridor is like, which is why I really wanted to do the economic development piece so that we look at how that might redevelop. So again, looking at that long thing, what kind of things do you see with that kind of emerging place? And I do say that I also have been to Torrance, and yes, that would be an effective campaign for that particular locale. But it would be also interesting to hear how effective you were with that, because I know what was when I was there, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, wandering around that beach, and what happened due to your marketing campaign. So those are 2 questions I have.
Okay, so I'll answer the last one.
Start with the economic development piece.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Deb.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to start with the economic development piece.
Yes, but I was going to answer the success of Torrance. So one of the things that we were highly graded on was we were hired right when Toyota had announced that they were relocating to Texas, and the loss of the hotel room nights that business brought in was significant, devastating, really. And so our goal was, how can we get the leisure traveler to come and stay, and how can we tap into some of the more the markets that would be more desirable to come and fill that void. And so I have to say that the first year we took over, we actually had an increase in the tourism tax, which means we not only filled that empty void, we actually had an increase. It wasn't huge. It was like 2% when we're accustomed to double digits usually. But the fact that we were able to overcome all of that loss and still have some growth on top of that was truly a testament. And we have some other metrics too that we measure against, but it was quite a boost for the city when we came in, because it was not an easy task. That much was for certain. But we got amazing results that we're very proud of. And then Carrie, I'm sorry, did you want to jump in on the other part?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So we feel like the economic development piece is such an important and critical piece of it, and certainly just not only business retention and expansion. So keep what you have and help them grow and expand, and then also tap into who's coming into that L shape. Build relationships with those businesses and remove any barriers for their success. So what that means for us is maybe it's learning their supply chain, for example, or their corporate partners. Things like shipping, for example, that can make their lives easier, and look for those future opportunities to recruit. So, it's about that business attraction, find who those high-end retailers are for you guys and really make more of them. So trying to tap into what's attractive to businesses and companies to see Sunset Valley as a place for them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, do you have any additional questions from council members? Okay, seeing none. John Popola.
Thank you, Mayor. Am I coming through okay?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for the presentation. Great story, great outcomes on the Torrance case study. I think that was going to be my question, is how did you measure success in practical terms? Because I am a vanity metrics skeptic. Things like impressions are a means to an end, not an end to themselves. I'd like to hear, and I think the city council would really want to hear more detail about your answer about the budget, which was a question that I had in reviewing the proposals. I don't have your proposal right in front of me at the moment. I have my notes from it, but it seemed from my reading of it pretty significant that you didn't seem to have media dollars included, or I think you had 23,000 for ad unit production, which might be a misreading. There might be elements that are included elsewhere. So can you give a little more detail and vision for how you right size to this target budget? And I'll just say I empathize with the fact that all the firms, yourself included, are being sort of asked for more scope than this budget should be expected to accommodate in terms of consumer research and economic development and public policy and city planning, and let's do marketing and branding, and don't forget the placement. I think there's some decisions on the client side here that need to be culled so you can have a scope that is right sized to what's feasible in the real world. But let's assume it's mostly branding, positioning, marketing, placement. I want to hear more about how you're going to answer that question, other than yes, we can right size, like how, even in just broad strokes.
I'm happy to take that one, John, for you. And yeah, so to address that, we work a lot with government entities, and so we are very efficient when it comes to maximizing budgets. Certainly, we're able to, complete the scope and the job that we have at hand. We're very familiar with working within this type of a budget, to be honest. And then I think the piece about bringing in our media partner. So, even if we do 1/3 of the budget going to media, so that would be about $76,000 with my rough math. We did a hypothetical budget, and knowing, like you said, not all impressions are created equal. We're giving you the most up-to-date media tactics. And we're proposing that will give you more than $110,000 in media dollars. So really maximizing that budget for you. Because like we've all mentioned here, if you have that brand new brand and we're not able to get the word out and do all that sophisticated recruiting, what good is it really, right? So we're able to not only work within that budget frame, but then also bring the media dollars to support your campaign messaging. So we feel very confident. I don't know if maybe Mike or Deb want to chip in on how we would break out that budget, but our creative budget encompasses not only that initial research and discovery, but presenting out a minimum of 3 concepts, as well as all the ad execution to deliver on our proposed media plan.
Yes, and when you do the job right and you get the messaging to where it's really going to resonate, you really start getting efficient, and you can really build on that, and we can start to create a perception of what Sunset Valley has to offer. So I think the creative messaging is absolutely key, and I think that it's also just in general breaking the norms and that out-of-box thinking that nobody might have thought of it this way before, and that's what we bring. We bring a perspective that is a bit unusual, that I have to say humbly usually nails it, and then everything starts to build and goes a lot faster because it is authentic to who you are. It is what you have to offer, and we are very accustomed to evolving with the economic development. I mean, I know this was a question earlier, but that downtown Napa scenario that we shared with you is that, we were definitely the place that people drove by and never stopped. And if they even heard about it, they heard don't stop. It's not a great, downtown has nothing. And we took these empty storefronts and we put art installations in them, and we took this nothing and made it a major attraction that could be enjoyed 24/7 because it was illuminated, and the art installation was protected because it was all behind glass storefronts, and now that program's completely gone, and there's a completely new shopping center there. So we really accomplished our goal in terms of what was happening at that point in time and where we got to in this current state. And we've had Napa for about, I think, almost 8 years now. So we really like to hold on to you guys once we get you. So you better like us if you choose us, because we won't let you go. We just want to succeed and get you guys where you want to be. Any other questions?
We are out of time, so I'll close out the questions there. Is there anything that you or your team want to say as wrap up? And then I'm going to ask you to do the same and stick around in case we have additional questions after the third presenter. But
absolutely, no, we'd be delighted to stay. And I think we've pretty much shared what we have to offer. We think we're a great fit. We love these challenging areas because we always find the amazing in them. And it just seems like you have an incredible story to tell, and it would just be amazing to be able to do that for you. So hopefully we've shared enough about us that has set us apart. But you still have round 3 here with your third firm. So may the force be with you.
Thank you so much.
Certainly.
And council members, I did have a request from Sylvia, and her request before we move to the next item, and it's also an item that I'm sponsoring, and so I'm good with the request, which is to move item number 6, to table it to the next meeting. And Sylvia, you may have a specific reason that if you'd like to mention that while we're getting the next team set up.
The auditor is billing by the hour, and we're not done.
Got it. Okay, so
requested.
And council members, could we have a motion and a second to table item number 6, which is to review and accept their presentation. That allows them to not sit here also on the hour. Review and accept the fiscal year 18-19 annual financial audit. Councilmember Medicus and Councilmember Rosengarten.
Motion to table this item.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. Councilmembers, would you please cast your votes? All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please read the votes into the record for us.
Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes. Councilmember Reeds, yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. And Sylvia, are we all set up for our next team?
Hello, testing my microphone.
Yes.
I'm
I
sorry.
wasn't watching the video to see whose mouth was moving, but I did hear somebody speaking.
Sorry, Richard, if you could have your folks raise their hand so I can unmute them.
Oh, she means your digital hand, not your actual hand. That allows us, when you raise your, and also for residents, when you raise the digital hand, it allows those that are organizers, we can sort you to the top. So like right now, I actually can't see everybody that's in the meeting in my list. So with the hand, I can sort people that have hot mics and hands up to the top of the list. So it's just a helpful tool. So I see Scott Erickson, you are now unmuted.
So Chris, Diana, Richard, Scott, and Stephen are all unmuted. Is there anybody else?
No, that's all.
That's all of us.
Okay, great. And so now you have control over muting yourself as you wish throughout your presentation. And what is on the screen is what you would like for us to have on the screen, yes?
Correct.
Okay, great. Welcome, and you guys have the floor.
Super. Well, maybe just do brief introductions to make sure sound is working. My name is Chris Fair, President of Resonance.
I'm Diana Carr. I'm Chris's partner and the Vice President of Storytelling.
I'm Richard Cutting Miller, Executive Vice President for Resonance.
I'm Scott Erickson, the Vice President of Marketing Strategy.
I'm Stephen Pedigo. I lead our economic development practice, and I am the Texan on the team. So good to see you all.
And you gave us a shirt to clue us off to that, so thank you for that.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us today. You can go ahead and advance to the next slide. We'll go through these pretty quickly. I know a lot of people aren't familiar with our firm, so we'll give you a little bit of background on who we are, and then dive into the questions. Essentially, when you look at Resonance, we are focused on placemaking, at place marketing, place branding for countries, cities, and communities. Primarily in North America, but I'm also working internationally. You can go to the next slide. Our work at Resonance is exclusively focused on thinking about the prosperity of places, whether that's attracting talent, whether it's attracting visitors, or whether it's attracting residents. Our team, if you can go to the next slide, is I think really what distinguishes and makes Resonance unique is that we are interdisciplinary, in that we are focused on not only marketing of places, but also the economic development strategy and thinking and understanding about what goes into attracting people to places. So a lot of our research is around studying places. We have a full research team. We can go to the next slide. One of the things that we are most well known for at Resonance is our approach to benchmarking and measuring quality of place. We spend a lot of time doing our own research, understanding what is it that attracts somebody to visit, live, or work in a community. That's led to the America's and World's Best Cities rankings that we produce in partnership with National Geographic. And actually today we just released our America's Best Small City rankings, looking at cities across the US between 100 and 500,000 people. And I'll let Stephen speak to, if you go to the next slide, a little bit around our thinking around what is it that makes places work today in this time of COVID, where we've been doing a lot of thinking.
Sure. I think one of the things as you're developing a place brand, particularly in this time, is you really have to think about the impact that the pandemic is having on economic development. And, and as I sat through the other presentations, one of the things that I really think differentiates us as a firm really is that expertise around economic development and understanding really what drives business development today in communities. This is a sort of our thinking on how Main Streets, particularly downtown areas, are going to be really having to think about economic development and thinking about how they're positioning their communities going forward. Everything from the types of services that you're providing, both financial and technical services, to the way that you're sort of thinking about how you develop your downtowns. And the comments earlier about the need and the development that's coming with your downtowns quite exciting, but how does that shape into this brand? And then finally, how do you communicate that story? Economic Development 101 is about having a terrific marketing message to share and sell that message. And so all of those principles come into us in terms of the strategy by which we approach economic development.
So another thing we do in terms of our research as we try to develop a holistic view of places is studying people. And you can go to the next slide. There's a picture of me actually much more formally dressed than I have been for the last 100 days, as it happens. But what we do is we try and ask the right questions in our research so that we can understand really what it is that gives people an emotional attachment to place, because we can't create a really compelling story, whether it's for economic development, tourism development, or community development, if we don't understand that emotional bond between people and place. So whether we're studying the future of Chinese international travel, the future of luxury travel, the top 1%, 5%, and 10% of American travelers, or millennials, what we're trying to understand when we do our research is what is it that creates that emotional bond, and how can we take that emotional idea and sentiment and turn that into language and story that then becomes a message for across the board, really, for economic development and tourism development, everything you want to get to.
So if you go to the next slide, really about half our work is around strategic planning. As Stephen mentioned, we have a core practice in economic development, also tourism and real estate development. So we're working with cities, communities, developers, helping them plan for the future. And then if you go to the next slide, we talk a little bit about the creative side of our business, which I think is really what makes Resonance unique, is that we've paired both the logic of research and strategy. As you can see here, this is just some of the work that we've recently been doing, thinking about how marketing needs to adapt in the time of COVID. So yes, we have a long history in marketing of places prior to the pandemic. We know we need to adapt and look at what types of messaging is appropriate. Right now, we're working with several municipalities on COVID-specific recovery strategies, which leads us into then the execution of those strategies. If you go to the next slide, which is around the actual marketing of places, which is the largest part of our firm, which is focused on creative development, from website production, ad concepting, branding, into telling that story across a variety of channels, whether that's earned media, owned media, shared media, etc. We're currently working right now with about 15 different communities, cities, on various different types of branding and marketing projects, ranging from creating a brand for South Bend, Indiana, to right now doing an economic development strategy for Scottsdale, Arizona, to, as I mentioned, doing recovery strategies for places like downtown Calgary, in terms of looking at what are the appropriate communications and channels to support retail in both the short, medium, and the long term. We can go to the next slide. I think just in summary then, in terms of what really makes Resonance unique, is kind of that blend of both the logic that comes from the research and all the strategic planning that we have with respect to benchmarking places, doing consumer research, stakeholder engagement, developing the strategy, and then marrying that with people on the creative side of our business in terms of articulating that story. And I think that really came through in your RFP, that a lot of what you were looking for before just getting into a campaign was articulating and identifying really what is the brand for Sunset Valley, what is its competitive identity, and that we need to define that together first before we start talking about the execution of what types of ads we should be playing or what media channels we should be going in. So when you work with Resonance, you're really bringing together both the best of the logic behind making places successful and prosperous, and the magic. And I'll turn it over to Stephen to talk about kind of the goal.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. So, as working with you all on this project, as you sort of think through the goal and read through the RFP, we really sort of saw three key goals that sort of jumped out to us as part of the project. This first quote is a terrific, it's a great quote from your mayor, and I won't read the quote, but as I sort of distill this quote, one of the things that really sort of set with me was not just about developing a brand or an identity that was about retail. Sunset Valley has great retail, but you're more than retail. And you're a city that is a great place to live, a great place to visit. But we should also be thinking about, particularly in a post-COVID world, what does it look like in terms of a place to live and work and play? So, we heard this question earlier about destination marketing be a lot about this idea of tourism development, but really what we've had to think about in terms of development of identity is really about destination development, destination for business, destination for visitors, but also destination for residents and talent, right? You all are competing with your jurisdictions around you for people to want to live, work, and play in your community. So this comprehensive identity, I think, is goal one. Go to the next slide, please. In terms of the second goal, the thing that I think really stuck with us is after you've really sort of identified this identity, is being able to really tell that story and making sure that people sort of understand that story. And one of the things I think that's great about our team is you'll meet us throughout this presentation is this multidisciplinary, as Chris mentioned. We've got marketers, we've got place designers, we've got developers, folks that have a really clear sense of how to communicate a broad message. And so as you think about goal two is really not only just developing that identity, but also having a way to really tell that story and ensuring that you're communicating that story. I teach economic development. I'm faculty at the LBJ School, have been there for many years. And one of the number one thing that I tell my students is that if you're doing economic development, one of the foundation points is being able to communicate your story in a way that really resonates this. And so this is, and goal two is really being able to communicate that story. So the final thing in terms of, if you go to the next slide, in terms of the third goal, as we sort of see this project, is really ensuring that we're all communicating and on the same page. When you're dealing with community development and community marketing and identity requires collaboration, it requires coordination, it requires everyone to be on the same song sheet, for instance. And so, sort of the third piece of this in terms of the key goal for us is ensuring that we're developing an identity and a strategy that we're all working for, they're all communicating towards a collective goal, so that bringing together partners. And what's great about processes like this which I get so geeked out about, is that you start to really develop and locate partnerships that you would have never maybe have thought of as we go through the process of bringing different voices and people and different stakeholders to the table. So those are sort of the three goals that we sort of see. So go to the next slide. So, what is the current brand? Who are you currently? I think we've heard a lot about that this evening. I think a lot of us sort of reflect this. One of the great things about our process is discovering this. But as you all know, you're this sort of hidden jewel in a fantastic metropolitan area, a place that I call home. It is a place that is unlike any other, sort of the gateway to the whole country, in the sense of this, in terms of Central Texas. And so there's lots of great quality of place and great quality of values here that allow us to sort of tell that story as a great place to live. Next slide, please. The challenge of the thing that we also obviously also face with this is that you do sit within a metropolitan area that has lots of unique assets. That question about how do we tell the Sunset Valley story in position to the Austin story, the position of the Westlake story, and others. That's going to be a process which we'll have to go through in terms of being able to communicate your value. So that becomes a key piece of this. But if you go to the next slide. I think one of the most exciting things about your project, or about working with you, is that you're really a place that's really ready to be discovered. There's tons of things that are happening in terms of amenities. You've made amazing investments in terms of placemaking, in terms of the activities that you're providing, and all those types of things. And so we really see this as an opportunity to take the time to think about with you as a place to discover and to uncover who you are and communicate that to the world. So I'll turn the presentation over.
Next slide, please. The project that we're going to be working on together with Sunset Valley is all about creating a marketing strategy and a brand that differentiates you from your competition, that identifies the target audiences and how we speak to them and directly connect with them. The brand proposition that we're going to create will really give us an identity that resonates both today and in the future for Sunset Valley. Next slide. The work plan that we have developed for this project is relatively straightforward, but it's all about finding the sweet spot that connects visitors who are coming to do a little shopping, to have a nice meal out, to do a little recreating, with the economic development opportunities, connecting with those potential businesses, whether they be retail, services, professional services, or otherwise. And let's not forget the residents. The pride of place is essential for a project like this in creating a brand that really articulates what the place is all about. We'll do that through a series of activities, starting with research. We'll speak with a lot of stakeholders and diving in, especially with the owners, the operators, with workshops with residents and with city officials to understand what are your perceptions, what are your opinions, what are the opportunities and the issues that need to be addressed in this branding exercise and marketing strategy exercise in order to tell that story and to do it authentically for your place. And I hate to say it, but a banana republic is a banana republic, no matter whether it's in Sunset Valley or whether it's in Napa Valley. And finding what's special about your place through this exercise will be exceedingly important. And we'll do that through a branding workshop. We're very good at really digging in and helping stakeholders articulate the vision for a place and identify the themes and really the stories that they want to tell and the aspirations for the future. That workshop will guide us in developing a storyline, which is really focused on the personality of your place. There's a lot of great places to go shopping. There's a lot of great places to dine out. If you can go back, please, a little bit to the previous slide. We'll use that storyline to really give the personality, to identify the personality and to articulate the personality, and then to translate those words, those ideas, those themes into a creative brand identity, and of course go through the process of creating some alternatives, but most importantly is testing that with the audiences that we're going to be focused and targeted on, because it's usually the case where we always know what a place is about, but frankly it's our audiences that are telling us what the place is about. And then we'll go through the exercise of creating a detailed marketing strategy with all the tactics and the media and the budgets necessary to roll this out. And then finally sharing this back with the community that's engaged in this process so that they're not only working with us to create the identity and the brand and the strategy, but also to implement and to move it forward in the future. Next slide, please.
Great. I'll briefly hit on some of the questions that Rick and the team alluded to during our process presentation. First of all, thank you for submitting these ahead of time. It was very helpful to see what you were thinking about. And we formally answered these here. The first about the unique selling point of Sunset Valley and then business input. The following slide has some of our initial answers on it. But as we've talked about throughout the entire presentation, our teams really work across strategy, design, brand, economic development, placemakers to really find the holistic essence of a place. We look at all of these formal processes and research points and create SWOT analyses and brand maps and USPs, but we also look at something that's an ESP, an emotional selling point that's very, very unique to every single destination. Our process really does rely heavily on working with all the teams, with the committee that's already done all of the diligence to look through these proposals and to recommend the agencies that come through. And we'll work with you to identify stakeholders as we go through. The next few questions, I know the presentation is going through some of our work here. You'll see there, I'll keep voicing over here. In terms of media buying and execution, while we did not put specific media buying dollars into the proposal, we do have those services, and that's absolutely something that we can do and work within the budgets that have been outlined. And streamlining our activities to pare down or pare back by looking at consolidating some of the initial work, and also by doing a lot of virtual meetings instead of travel, we can pare down the initial proposal cost by about $25,000. And of course, we'll work with you throughout the process from the beginning of the implementation all the way through to the marketing strategy and execution to ensure that we're right-sized and addressing the right audiences with the right budgets and timeframes.
I think one thing that's important to note that as we looked at our proposal, it's easy to define the process leading up to creating the brand and the marketing strategy, which really uses about half of the budget, but then reserving that other half for implementation. But it's implementation that we don't necessarily know what those are. We talk a lot about, we assume that there's going to be media involved, but as we think about and do the marketing strategy and do the engagement with stakeholders, that allocation of resources is really to be determined in terms of signage, events, PR. Media is just one channel that would be part of that marketing strategy, and we would look to define that through this process and the creation of that plan.
Thank you. We are out of time.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Council members, let's start again at the council level to see if there are any questions for this presenter. And I had one question. So for the people who presented this evening, are you all in, aside from our one Texas person, are you all in New York? Is that correct? Oh, Sylvia, could you please, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Stephen is in Austin. Two of us are in New York. One is in Montreal, and I'm in Vancouver.
Oh, you guys are all over the place. Okay, and so if we were to give you all the contract, for the nights where we do want to be old school and have somebody show up either at City Hall or to help defend something that we might want or might not want, who would you send for that? Would it be your local person?
Yeah, it would be Stephen Pedigo, our VP of Strategy, who's local.
Council members, any questions? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So thank you, Mayor, for asking half of my question. The creative team, it's clear that in terms of economic development, you guys were really extraordinary, and it was great to have someone local to be able to talk about that. But not having a sense that your marketing that I saw presented was more similar to what I imagined we would, or what you showed us would be more similar to what we might deliver. That was kind of my concern. And then, since no one from your creative team is from here, getting that sense of how you were going to grok us in fullness, for those of you who are old enough to get that reference, that was kind of my sense about how the creative team was going to capture that and understand that about us. I mean, because Stephen is not your creative guy, he's your economic guy, and he's your local guy, and so that was kind of my concern as to how you would do that. And then again, did I hear you correctly? For a dollar figure of what your media buy was going to be, what would that be? Those are my two questions.
I think, I guess on your first answer is that, Stephen actually does lead all our community branding projects, whether that's been in South Bend, Indiana, Tulsa, Oklahoma, et cetera. So there is a transition there, and the strategy from a creative perspective, really does fall out of that. So it's less about trying to just, getting the feel for the place is important, but a lot of our strategy is really driven, and the creative is therefore driven by the engagement from stakeholders and the research that we do as part of the process. So I think our creative is very research driven. That said, because of that, we're able to work in a lot of different places. Our team, as I said, is working on 15 different places right now across the country, and they don't visit all of those places. So we're well accustomed to using our process to engage with stakeholders, conduct our research, to brief the creative team, and then creating a range of opportunities, and then testing those, with the local community to see which resonates with them the best. I think your second question around the media is, I guess we looked at about half of the budget being for implementation, whether that is all media or it's a combination of media, placemaking, PR. As I said, I think that really needs to be determined through the marketing strategy, but we have looked at really reserving approximately half of the budget there for implementation.
Thank you. And Councilmember Gonzalez, if that did not capture everything that you needed, if you would raise your hand for a follow-up question. Councilmember Ellett.
Madam Mayor, is this me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I get the sense from the presentation that you folks are good at, and you take pleasure in digging below the surface and maybe debunking some myths and maybe in enhancing some good points. I get that sensation. And can you tell me how you do that, if in fact you do that, and give me an example of where you've done it?
Sure. I think a lot of that is, research, driven. Oftentimes things that communities think they're, really good at, they may not actually be a differentiator. So that, there's opinion, and then there's, insight that comes out of the research. Actually, this slide on the screen, this community, Salmon Arm, which is a very small community, 16,000 people in British Columbia. There were some things that they thought they were really good at, which were really just not differentiators as we did kind of the data collection. And there were other things that we discovered through that process that they actually were leaders in that they didn't know. And I think that is part of what a successful strategy is. It's really about maybe, debunking some perceptions and also uncovering some, other opportunities that really turn out to be the true differentiating characteristics of that particular community.
And, when you have an example like Salmon Arm, which is a place that thought it was differentiated by the fact that it was by a lake and it was beautiful. Well, there's a lot of places by lakes that are beautiful in British Columbia, but what they were really good at was they had more patents, for instance, that we found out than a whole bunch of other their competitive set. They had way more startups than we had originally anticipated. So that led to then this idea of a line which was Small City, Big Ideas, which was something that became a bit of a revelation on a local level as well, because there was that notion that they were a little bit special, but they'd never been able to articulate that. So once that we got into this idea of Small City, Big Ideas, then it became, and what you're seeing on this slide, which to your point about creative that maybe looks a little bit like something you've already seen, in this particular case, it ended up being the first change in brand for the city in about 50 years. So it was, I will admit, a bit of a baby step ahead, but in terms of the idea and in terms of the way we communicated that idea of Small City, Big Ideas, it really got all of the locals on board, and it really became a rallying cry for tourism attraction and talent attraction and residence attraction as well. So it's, the role of creative and the role of design per se is always very different from one place to the next. For a lot of our real estate stuff, which I would love to have shown you, we've got some pretty sexy things for places that our team from BC has not necessarily been to, but I think we're pretty good at interpreting the need of the place and the time, and also, dialing up or down that degree of individuality that's really appropriate for places.
So this is Stephen. I'd like to jump in with another example, and that's a community that we just finished, and that's South Bend, Indiana. The question from the council member was the idea of uncovering sort of some challenges and how you sort of pick at those challenges. In South Bend, Indiana, we went in thinking this is a very interesting city, a place that has had, terrific universities, amazing anchor-based institutions. It had the stardom of Mayor Pete. And as we walked through the process at the beginning of this, if you would have asked us about that in terms of even just that initial local conversation, it was going to be all about sort of positioning South Bend as with these anchor-based institutions. But as we went through the process, what we really realized was this was a place that was quite diverse. It was a place that had a really interesting place in terms of needing to attract and retain residents as well as older residents, as students, et cetera. And so the work that we did in South Bend was about using the brand to really challenge the city to think about how it addresses a challenge that it had, which was talent attraction. And so our We Plus You campaign really used the research to dive through that. And as Diana said, that work was really driven, directed by our creative team, but really driven from the research and the work of understanding really what drives community development development, frankly.
Thank you, and I'll do another call for council member questions. And while I'm waiting to see if there are any council members, a follow-up to my question, other than Stephen, have any of you been to Austin?
Yes, I have.
Yes,
okay.
We all have.
I won't dare ask, but I'm curious, did you happen to even note Sunset Valley, which I can't imagine why you would unless you already knew you were going for this job?
I confess,
I have not been to Sunset Valley.
Okay, just curious. Just curious. I'm used to small town everything in Sunset Valley and Austin. Wouldn't be surprised if one of y'all had a family member that lives on Pillow Road or something. Okay, and so Stephen, sort of same question. And for me, this isn't about physically being present, because actually for me, I work in tech. I'm very comfortable doing. I have an immigration practice that's 100% virtual, pretty much. My clients hate seeing me in person because they're all young. So Stephen, but I would like to know, I want to ask you a few questions just to make sure there's at least somebody on the team who gets Sunset Valley. So I assume you have driven through or been to Sunset Valley?
I have, yes.
Okay, what part of Austin do you live in?
Sure, I live in South Austin. I actually don't live too far from you. I live in the Bolden Creek neighborhood here in South Austin.
Oh yeah. Okay. And how long have you been in Austin?
I'm a born and raised Texan. I grew up in Beaumont, went to the University of Texas, and also have been faculty at the LBJ school.
Perfect. Okay. And clearly you've been in Austin long enough that this question shouldn't throw you off. If you had
my driver's license number too, I'm just joking with you.
Could you give since you are familiar with Sunset Valley and South Austin, how would you describe us as being different from Rollingwood or Westlake, the three tiny bubbles within Austin?
Yeah, I think that's an interest. I think one of the things that makes you somewhat interesting is the fact that you sort of sit, you are a smaller community that's sitting with the community around you. I think that's one of the things for you. I think the fact that you are, this question about sort of the retail opportunities that you have, I think that's an interesting opportunity. I think that sets you out a little bit. I sort of think about you as one of the challenges I think that is when I think of Sunset and think about Westlake and others that you just described is that those communities have really set identities. And if I was to ask my colleagues or my the friends or folks that I hang out with in Austin about if you could tell me where Sunset Valley is or what is Sunset Valley, they would probably describe it as Austin, whereas these other communities that you mentioned have identities. And so one of the things I think when we think about Sunset Valley is this, as we said in the presentation, this sort of just undiscovered piece, really trying to articulate who you are and what you are going forward is something both an opportunity but also a challenge a bit.
Thank you. And for those of you that aren't in Austin, easy answer to that is also to say Sunset Valley is the only place you can still ride a horse through town in Austin. Truly, and we still have residents who do ride their horses through town. Council members, I don't see any of you taking a chance for either a question or a follow-up question, and so with the remaining time, I'm going to go to any of our other attendees.
And Ruth, I'm going to unmute you. You have the floor.
Hi, thank you. My question is something you all didn't get to because of your time limit on your presentation. It was the last one, and I'd like to hear your answer to it. How will you leverage digital platforms to identify and understand our audience? How will you engage and build a relationship with them? And then how will you compel and reward them for choosing Sunset Valley for their destination to shop, dine, or recreate?
So I'll grab that one. Ruth, thank you for the question. If Sylvia, if you want to move up in the slides just a little bit right before the thank you slide, that's Ruth's question and answer. And really what we do from a programmatic standpoint is during that research and discovery phase, we'll look at those target audiences and we'll work with the committee and with the teams to assess who those audiences are. From there, we'll look at that messaging strategy and what works best for them. And then we will target those audiences and highlight the value propositions and emotional triggers that work. The key thing here is digital is clearly likely to be a very main part of the campaign, as it would be any time now, especially with the way in which and the frequency in which we need to reach people. So we'll look at very common things like digital platforms and social media and A/B testing and lookalikes and SEM and SEO. And we have all of those at our disposal. But one thing I do want to really clarify is that we don't have a cookie cutter approach. We don't say this is the one process that we apply to every single project as we go in. Instead, we look at everything holistically. We look at the needs of the organization, the destination, the businesses, the residents. We look at buying cycles. We look at time to make decisions. It's very, very different if we're doing a campaign to interest somebody to come shop for the holidays versus trying to entice businesses to come and think of Sunset Valley for setting up shop in the future. So we'll look at all of those, but those technologies and those types of digital experiences are viable options for all of the audiences and all of the marketing that we would do.
Thank you. And John, I saw that your hand was up. Did you have a question that you wanted to ask? And if so, raise your hand again. And we are at the end of the 15 minutes. And so I will ask the same of you. If you please stick around, you won't have to stick around as long as the others. We're going to go straight into deliberation now. And for all of the residents and attendees, this will give you another opportunity. So Ruth, John, others that I know have questions for either one or all or for council, you guys will have plenty of opportunity to speak again. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, for any non-council members who are going to want to speak, if you would please consolidate so that when you are recognized, I'll give you the normal 4 minutes that we allocate, and you will have to get all of your questions and comments out in that one period, because we are not going to have time to come around again. So with that, council members, all three of our presentations have ended. So please raise your hands as you'd like to start deliberating, or if you have follow-up questions for staff or for any of the presenters this evening. And of course, at any point, I would welcome a motion if there's a council member that already feels strong enough to make a motion for selection. Councilmember Rosengarten.
I move that we rely on Ampersand Canales as our next marketing firm.
We have a motion, and so at this point I'll look for a second, which will open it for discussion. Councilmember Ellett, you were the next person that I saw with a hand up. Did you want to second that motion or not?
No, because I was going to make a motion for a different company. So no.
Okay, then let's see if the other hand up. Councilmember Gonzalez, did you want to second that motion?
Yes, I do, Mayor.
Okay, so we have, and for the applicants, we're not done. So that just means it opens it for discussion, and then we will ultimately see if there is at least 3 votes for that motion. So we have a motion and a second. And with that, I'm going to remute and ask that council members raise their hands if they're wanting to speak to the motion. Sorry about that, that's my dog. Council members, please raise your hand if you have any desire to deliberate on the motion that's on the floor. Okay, Councilmember Reitz.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So, wow, this is quite a decision. These are three firms that are really very outstanding. And so I came into this meeting thinking that Ampersand was going to be at the top because of the localness. And I thought that was a big strength. And I also really liked their campaign for the woodlands. It's in our nature. I thought that was very clever. I thought it spoke to it. It was a great branding technique, but it also gave some of that emotional connection, which is kind of what I'm looking for. I mean, I'm not looking for just a great little font or tagline, but if it's a tagline, it has to have an emotional connection to me. So I thought Ampersand did a really great job with that example. I also like the fact that they know our stores and are very intimately connected to them. Augustine, I was really impressed with their histories of working with Torrance and Napa Valley, and I thought that was really might be a very direct comparison to what working with us would be. And so that I was actually quite surprised to really get into that and see what they did there. And I have to say, I'm really pretty impressed with that. I also like the fact that they were with their marketing firm or their media firm, that there's a value added into that package there too. Residents, I think having Mr. Pettigo as part of their team is an incredible strength. I think he would teach us a lot about economic development, and really we could work very well with him to develop our plan, our strategy. I thought that was their strength there. They also had beautiful photography in their presentation. But in all said and done, I would probably lean toward, and this is a tough one. This is an incredibly tough one. I'm right now I'm leaning toward Augustine, just because of the histories with those cities that I think are a good parallel for us. But this is a very tough decision, and I have to say thank you to all three firms who came and put their presentations together, and they are all very impressive. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reitz. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Did you give me the floor, Mayor?
I did. Sorry. Yes, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Okay, I just want to add my praise to what Councilmember Reitz said. I have watched council meetings from I don't know 15 years now, and I have never seen such extraordinary quality in any of our presentations for advertising kinds of things that have come up over the years. I just think all three firms are superb, and I really, for different reasons, and I really appreciate the effort and the energy that they put into it. And I really appreciate the incredible work that the CED committee did going through the incredible amount of applicants that we had and selecting these three for us. It is a difficult decision. They all have strengths, and were I to lose out with my choice here, I think we would be well served. I do think for me, that Ampersand has the edge for the emotional connection that Councilmember Reitz was talking about, and for getting who I think it's important that we are. I think that Resonance makes a good point that I could be wrong about who we are and what we could be. But I'm willing to throw the dice on that, because I think that the vision of who we are and who we could be speaks to where I would like us to go as a town. That said, I could be wrong, and I and this is one of the few times that if I end up being wrong, I don't think it's going to be all that bad because they're all three such extraordinary firms. But I would go ahead and say that my bias is towards the artwork, and it's the edge of the artwork that makes me want to go with Ampersand and Canales, because I do think for me the artwork is a lot of what tips it. I was really tempted by the campaigns of Augustine. I think that they were, and their answers to the questions, especially in this presentation. And I'm really interested and excited, because I am interested in economic development. And if another piece comes up, I sure would like to keep residents in for some economic development work in the future, if we have that opportunity to work with them, because I am very intrigued of that. But that said, that's my rationale. And I really, really appreciate every single piece of how this has played out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Councilmember Ellett, I'm about to move to you. I'm going to go ahead and offer my little summation here, which is I was here, well, I've been serving now since 2009 without a break. I was here when the last firm was selected, and I gave a pretty strong opposition when they were hired. I thought that it was just a very, to be honest, pitiful selection. And I'm pretty sure that they remembered that throughout the rest of my service, how much I disliked us hiring them. With that being said, I'd like to echo exactly what Councilmember Reitz and Councilmember Gonzalez just said, which is I would agree with Councilmember Gonzalez. I don't think we've ever seen this caliber ever in our city of presentations for service of this type. For me, I do have a very clear ranking of 1, 2, and 3, but I'm not even going to offer that because I have confidence that council is going to make a good selection tonight, and that we would benefit from any of these 3 firms. And with that, I will give Councilmember Ellett the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I came into this, first of all, I totally agree. 3 very, very good presentations, and any one of them would be far better than what we've had in the past. Magnitude's better. Coming into this, having spent a lot of time with CED ranked, after a lot of work, ranked them 1, 2, and 3, and they ranked Resonance, and then Augustine, and then Ampersand. And I looked to this presentation to reinforce or change my mind of that recommendation, and I didn't get that. Having said that, all 3 are very good. Resonance stands out to me because I think we get the benefit of solid economic development, which I think is critical. And I think one without the other makes no sense. Marketing without economic development, branding without economic development, I think they go hand in hand. So I would lean definitely to that added bonus there, or added value in the Resonance presentation. I thought it was polished. I think I particularly like the fact that they're not scared to challenge what we may think is fact, but may be a myth. And that is important. I think we as a city that is going through the changes that we see, whether it be COVID-19 driven or whether it be the growth of Austin, I think we need that. So I welcome that discipline. Ampersand gave a lively, upbeat presentation that I thought had a lot of interesting things in there. The Torrance and the Napa downtown, having spent some time in the Napa Valley, never thought of ever driving, many years ago, stopping in the Napa downtown. And I think that was a tough challenge here. Ampersand, yes, I think there was a spirited presentation. I think the localness for me is satisfied with Resonance by the fact that we have that person here in town, in South Austin, who's also a faculty member at UT, and I think that means a lot of merit. So I come into this with, the CED recommendation strongly in my mind, and I think the presentations, all of them very, very good, has led me just to cement that to the next level and stay with those three in that order. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any? Thank you. Do we have any additional council members who wish to speak? Any additional council members? Do we have any residents who want to speak? And if so, I would ask that you speak in the context of the motion that's on the table so that we don't belabor or waste time, since we do have a clear motion. Okay, council members, I will call for a vote now. And Sylvia, if you would please read the vote back so that we can track it in the event that we need to make a second motion. Council members, please cast your votes via chat. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Okay. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Reeds, yes. Councilmember Ellett, no.
Thank you, everybody. The motion passes 4-1. And with that, we do have additional items this evening that we must get through. It is 9:01. I cannot continue the meeting without a motion and a second to do so. If we do proceed for the next hour, I would ask that we take a very quick break. Councilmember Medicus. Councilmember Medicus.
Motion to continue.
Thank you. Do we have a second to continue? Councilmember Rosengarten.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Sylvia, do you
Aye.
have a vote? Sylvia, do you have a vote? I think I just heard Councilmember Reeds.
You had them muted.
Sylvia,
So.
well, yeah, I was looking for them to, it's fine. Did anybody, I need Gonzalez and Ellett. Did you get a vote from them?
No. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes.
Excellent. So we will continue until 10 p.m. or sooner, not later than 10 p.m. We will take a break real quick. So 9:03, we will resume at 9:10. So a quick break, just long enough for people to use the restroom, get a drink, and resume. The meeting will continue recording, so please mute your mics. Thank you.
Sylvia, will you sorry, you are you back on?
I am back on.
Great, thank you. And is Regine and
Yes, been on.
Roxy? Okay, great. Council members, it is 9:07. We are resuming regular city council meeting for City of Sunset Valley for Tuesday, June 23rd. We tabled item number 6 until the next meeting. We are now at item number 8, which is to review and approve the reimbursement payment to the Sustainable Food Center for the expenses for January 1st through March 31st, 2020, in the amount of $7,382.73 from the hotel occupancy funds. And I'd like to add a little statement on this one, which is one, we absolutely should approve this. There was some confusion as to why it was even being put on a council meeting at all. Although there was an official policy that supported it, there was a request from, I don't remember if it was voted on, but there was a request from council members to, during this fiscal year, change our process from what it used to be, which was that the city administrator approved the reimbursement submissions, and instead to ask that they come before council to be approved. And so this is the second since that request was made. And you can see from the backup, I showed the timing from when the previous one was requested, put on a council agenda, and then approved. So there hasn't been a great delay or difference to the last time. What I would ask, though, of council, because of seeing the confusion that was created within the community, hold on, let me turn, I'm getting cameras, which is a distraction. Let me turn those off. Okay. What I would ask of council at this point is that we go back to doing it the original way, which is to, once we've approved a contract of this sort, that we allow staff to approve it. And if there's something specific that you want to have added attention, that you instead be clear in giving that to staff, or that you maybe ask that 2 separate staff members review it. I would ask that you clarify process. Now, if you really want to create a policy that requires these to come before council, I would ask just that you create a clear policy so that myself, staff, and residents understand, and that we not do it for just one vendor or one type of hot fund reimbursement, but that we apply that policy consistently to all of them. But in terms of tonight, I would hope that we approve this. And I apologize both to the farmers market and to any residents who thought that either Sylvia or I had wanted to not pay them. I've spoken to residents about this. I couldn't post an OpenGov because I'm not allowed to, but my clear communication to residents that asked was, at no time did I know at all that anybody had communicated with SFC about payment not happening. So that did not come from me, nor did I know about it until it was brought to my attention, actually through Ketten Corrode's posting on OpenGov. So that was the first time that I even realized that there had been a staff communication to SFC. But rather than us focusing on that, I'd like for us to recognize, let's make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. And so with that, council, we need to approve this tonight. And then if any of you have an opinion as to what we should do moving forward, if you would let me know so that we can decide if we need to create a fiscal policy or how you would like this handled in the future. Council Member Reitz.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, yes, I think if we do have a contract out and we have approved it, then yes, I think that we can make those payments without having to go through council. The only issue that I want to make with this one in particular, though, is that this is paid out of hot funds. And this is and part of this bill is $2,500 of it is for musicians and activity providers, which are really, to me, more art related, which is appropriate. You can still do that out of hot funds. And so my thought process here is, do we need to track that? Because we're only limited, I believe it's 15%. I'm sure, Karen, you can probably correct me that if I'm wrong. It could be 30%. But do we need to track that to make sure that this is an art-related expense versus an advertising expense? So that's my thought.
Thank you, Councilmember Reitz. Sylvia, do you want to say anything in response to Councilmember Reitz before I move to the next council member?
No, Mayor, I need to look at the policy to get specific details on spend categories and maximum amounts.
Okay, and that might be something, and I'm actually going to unmute you again, Wanda, so that you can respond to what I'm about to say. Sylvia, it seems that that might be something that we don't look to for this fiscal year, but that we just clarify either in our next contract or our next process for awarding hot funds, not just to SFC, but to any entity where they might be asking for reimbursement for those types of things, more art categorical items such as music. Is that what you meant, Councilmember Reitz, that this would be something we would look at for the next fiscal year?
Yes, it does. I mean, I think we need to keep track of it. It is, and yes, it's still perfectly appropriate to pay out of hot funds, but we just need to keep track of our categories and make sure that we are within our limits and such. So yes, I would look at that as in our contract for next year.
Thank
So
you.
I would make a motion.
Sure. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I would make a motion that we pay this and look at our next year's contract.
Thank you. And I'm going to have to lower hands. I've just lowered everybody's hand. If there is somebody who wants to second that, would you please raise your hand? Councilmember Medicus, would you like to second Councilmember Reitz's item?
Yes, I'd like to second. And Wanda,
thank you. Wait, hold on. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Councilmember Reitz, I was in the process of, I want to clarify one additional thing to your initial statement. So for the rest of this fiscal year, would you want us to go back to what we had previously done, which is that the city administrator approves these and that we then create a fiscal policy for next year? Or would you like to continue in this fashion for the rest of this fiscal year?
I think the city administrator could make the payments.
Great. And is that part of your motion as well?
Yes.
Thank you. And that's, sorry, Karen, I did not mean to cut you off. I wanted to get that in. Would you include that addition in your second?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so the motion that we have on the floor is 1, to make the payment, and 2, to go back to our original process, which is that the city administrator approves these, and that if we are to change it, that council would actually create a fiscal policy to support that change, which would apply to the next fiscal year. Is that correct, motion maker and second?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and with that, Councilmember Medicus, you have the floor. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Oh, I just wanted to confirm with Wanda, it's a 15% maximum on expenditures for the arts, and there are 2 separate accounts, so we should capture them in the accounts that they apply to.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mary, did you recognize me?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yes, Councilmember Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mayor, I know we have a resident who wants to speak to this this issue, so I want to make sure that we allow residents to speak on this. And I agree with the motion. And I do think that in our process, was this done for advertising dollars, or was this done for? Did we specifically say what the allocation was for?
I'm not sure that I understand your question. Is it a question for staff?
It probably is a question for staff. When we approved this allocation, because I know the Arts Commission tends to max out the not this year obviously, but normally that they would sort of max out the 15% that we would use in the hot funds. And so I just want to make sure that as Councilmember Reitz and Medicus were talking about, that if we're in our process saying that this is an advertising expense, that we're giving this money for advertising, that it stays in that. Otherwise, we run afoul of our bookkeeping system. So I certainly agree with Councilmember Reetz's point, and I wanted to know what this allocation had been done for. Was it for advertising, or was it a mixed allotment, which I don't think I've ever seen us do.
Sylvia, do you have a response?
It's generally a mixed allotment. There is obviously an advertising component, but there is also there is the musician piece that Councilmember Reeds talked about. I'm not necessarily sure that that is completely art driven though. I think it's just an attraction purpose to get people to come in to purchase. It's just a method to attract. So I would still say that falls into the advertising category.
Okay, I think that my experience of our discussions about that doesn't necessarily support that, but I will save that for next year's conversation, because I don't think it's not going to matter this year. We're not going to do that much musicians, but I think we definitely need to have that discussion as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And to the point that Councilmember Gonzalez made, although I'm recognizing Councilmembers first, if we do have residents in the room, if you would please raise your hand. Since we do have a motion on the floor, once we clear comments, I'm going to look to take action as quickly as possible so that we can move to our next item. Councilmember Rosengarten, you are self-muted. Councilmember Rosengarten.
Councilmember Reeds, I'd like to ask you, do you know why the policy was changed to where we brought SFC to council?
It's not a policy. There was direction from council. And so in retrospect, I should have, when that was made, said I need clarification and it needs to be formalized through an actual policy.
Excuse me, Mayor. Councilmember Reeds, do you remember why this was brought before council? Sunset SFC was brought before council.
Not really, but I do remember that there were some charges in there, like in a previous invoice, that were not acceptable, such as a microwave. And so that's why I'm thinking that happened, but I don't remember specifically. Do you?
Yes, that's exactly what happened on the last one, but the last one was brought forward also because the policy says in Budget and Finance that items should be brought before council for approval before they are paid. Once that was brought up in Budget and Finance, from there on, they wanted everything brought to council. Regine, you were in that meeting. Can you correct me if I am wrong, if you are there?
Regine is here, but I don't see that she's got audio. Sylvia, even what Councilmember Rosengarten just said, I'm not sure that it was that clear. I'm not sure that there was a clear direction from Budget and Finance. And even if there had been, I still don't know that there was a clear path that was defined by council that applies to everyone. And so that's where I'm looking for. If we're going to do this, we really need to put it in writing so that residents and vendors and everybody can see what is the policy for requesting and coming before council. And I don't know if you have Regine where she can speak. I can see that she's there.
She is self-muted. Hang on.
I see her twice. I'm not sure which one. Is it?
Can you hear me? Okay, so there was not a official policy, but it was submitted as a lot of So you can't hear Regine because she's got technical difficulties, but It was right about the time that I came on board, and there was a request from the council that all hot funds expenditures be brought back to the council for approval. If you recall, there was some issue with Art Fest also bringing what normally would have been approved by staff and the administrator through, and it had to come back to council for approval. So that was early on in the budget year, this fiscal year.
And so that's how I remember it also, Sylvia, that Budget and Finance wanted it, but that when it came to council, I can recall Councilmember Medic is bringing up that it's not that simple, that once it's been contracted and approved, to then expect every single reimbursement to be brought back to council is cumbersome or just not realistic. And so again, really what I'm asking for at this point is that council decide what do you actually want and make sure that it actually functions for whatever extra process you're wanting. But what I don't want to happen again is this, where there is miscommunication and it's creating a lag in us paying something that previously Clay and staff would review and approve. And so if really the issue is we want to make sure microwaves aren't being put on or something else, then that's something that I think council could discuss with staff and still trust that they would do that. And if not, we need to create a better policy.
Absolutely.
So,
Requirement when we approve invoices is to review the expenditures. So yes.
Could you say that again, Sylvia?
I said part of the process when we review invoices is to review the expenditures and see if they're appropriate, and if not, deny and communicate with the vendor about an expense that wasn't appropriate. So yes, that's a very natural expectation from staff.
And who, if we were to go back to that, would it be you doing that? Would it be Susanna doing that? Who would be the staff member who actually is responsible, who we would hold accountable if they approve something that shouldn't have been?
Well, ultimately, it's me. It's my signature on the approval, but we have a couple of layers here of folks who go through the invoices before it finally gets to me. Ultimately, you're going to hold me responsible.
And so maybe if it had happened in the past, maybe it's that, are those other layers Tanya and the accountant?
Correct.
Okay, and so maybe part of the solution is that we retrain them on what is or is not allowed.
Okay.
Councilmember Rosengarten.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, if you're saying that, and Sylvia, you're saying that you are the final one held accountable for everything that is paid, the signatures on the checks are the mayor and who else now?
It's the mayor, Chief Carter.
And Chief.
Yeah, the mayor and Chief Carter mostly.
So are they given the opportunity to see what the expenses are before they sign those checks?
No, that's not. And anybody who thinks that's what the chief and I are doing, no. So if you have Tanya looking at the specifics and you have the city accountant looking at the specifics, by the time it gets to Sylvia's desk, she is saying this is approved. I am not now, nor ever when I sign checks, because to do that would be I don't have that amount. So chief and I are not, when we go through checks, we're not going through the backup for each of those checks and flagging things and asking questions. So just like when backup gets posted and I'm sponsoring an item, oftentimes if it's an admin item, my sponsorship of it is truly saying to staff, is this ready to publish? And this item is an example of that. I didn't write the backup. It got posted, and then immediately residents were under the assumption that I personally was trying to not pay the farmers market, in part because I was the sponsor. So no, checks are not reviewed at that level of detail by myself or Chief Carter.
That's why I'm asking this out loud, so everybody knows the process.
Yeah, and that's why and that's why, and thank you. And I actually would love it if I didn't sign the checks. That's just the process that I inherited.
Which is really why I took myself out of the check signing. It doesn't seem correct to have a person who's approving and also signing. So I don't sign anymore, but I do approve. So there's a checks and balances there. No, the mayor doesn't go through a fine tooth comb, but there's two people behind me who also review things. But ultimately, I'm the one you're going to hold responsible.
Councilmember Rosengarten, is there anything else that you'd like to say before I move to the next council member?
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Mayor, I just think that we should save this for a different agenda item, because I think it's worth talking about the process of council direction, because there was a whole lot of things that ended up being council direction that I didn't think should have been council direction without having been voted on in the course of the previous year and a half. So I think that's a worthwhile second agenda, but I'd like to just move forward on this one and call the question.
Okay, we have a call the question, so that we need to take action on call the question. So unfortunately, anybody else who has your hand up, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry. I withdraw it because I want Miles to be able to speak. So I withdraw my call the question. Sorry.
Okay, and Miles does not have his hand up, but I hear you. Councilmember Reitz, would you please raise your hand again if you had anything you wanted to add? Joy, you have the floor if you would like it, and if you would please introduce yourself for those that don't know that you're our rep for SFC.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Joy Kosnowski. I'm Deputy Director at Sustainable Food Center, and we run the farmers market at Sunset Valley every Saturday morning. I think what we would benefit from is some clarity in terms of the remainder of the contract. We have stopped spending on the contract based on email communication between Ray Jean and myself and our staff, and it's not clear to us if we should continue spending hot funds from the contract.
Yes, Joy, you should. You should continue spending, and the email that you got from Ray Jean, it was an error.
Okay, thank you.
Joy, I did see that today, more importantly, what would be great for SFC would be to focus on your hot fund request for next year, because that might actually be, because it's a new contract, that might be where either you want to change the context or amount, context of what you're advertising, how you're advertising, or the amount that you're requesting, and vice versa. It gives an opportunity for council and residents to reevaluate, which isn't a question of if we want the farmers market. Hands down, we want the farmers market. But one thing I suggested to a resident yesterday, which I think surprised them, was our residents, our community could choose to support the farmers market outside of hot funds. So there's not a limit that says the only way we can support the farmers market is by giving them hot funds. That, of course, could go to the opposite side of the spectrum, and similar to some of our other JDRF One Walk is an example where they have said continuously every year, we want hot funds, we will request hot funds, but even if you don't give us hot funds, we still want our special use permit, we still want this location, we absolutely want to be here whether you are providing us with hot funds. I think this would be a year that it would be helpful for the farmers market. You know, when you go to present to Budget and Finance, if you would maybe help us by giving us that same information, which is to separate your desire to be in Sunset Valley with a special use permit from your request for hot funds. Residents sometimes don't know that difference, Joy, that there's kind of three separate things. There's your special use permit, there's the rent, and there's hot funds. So there's actually three separate moving parts that we have for you guys.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And Miles, I now see that you have your hand up. You have the floor. You're self-muted, but you do have the floor.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. The agenda item is whether to pay or not to pay the current bill from SFC, and we've gotten to some other ancillary discussions, which are all important. I want to first say that I never go to the farmers market, but I appreciate that it provides a service that many residents value. And I also look at it as a way that we are outreaching to the community outside of Sunset Valley with a certain identity that we like, that we're supporting local independent farmers, and we're healthy and natural. And that may play in even greater when we get our identity and branding all squared away. But regarding this particular bill, when I went through the materials for the agenda item tonight, I noticed the contract, September 19th, 2019, and it's based on hot funds, and it's very specific about the advertising. And I haven't really seen much of the advertising except what I can find online, and asked Sylvia today to get it from SFC. She would forward it to me, and I haven't seen it. You actually have the so-called tear sheets, and there's a problem. There's a apparent violation of the contract where it says the advertising shall include the name and logos of the city of Sunset Valley and the Holiday Inn Express, prominently displayed or otherwise incorporated into all of the advertising. And I'm glad that Joy's on the line in case there's something I'm not seeing. For the ads that I've seen in Edible Austin that I can get online, and the ones that are provided to me don't follow that at all. Now at Art Fest, we do our best, although sometimes it's a hassle. I have all those logos in there, but it's the following the letter of the contract and letter of the hot funds. In this case, it's a matter of the letter of the contract. So if someone can tell me what happened, are there ads that actually abide by this? And there's the other ads that I'm seeing on Edible Austin, not actually the ads that we're paying for.
Thank you. Miles, is that the end of your question and comment?
Actually, I can just add to that. I'd like to see that there's an ongoing relationship, someone who's sort of the point person who's really working with at SFC. It'd be nice to manage the relationship. I don't know who anyone's doing that now or not. And also let's determine some desirable outcomes of this relationship, the advertising reach and the image, and also sort of other one, attendance, if that's something that we want to know that we're actually bringing enough people in here. We don't really have any sales tax that we know of that can be engaged. We can only eyeball it, but nice to have someone who's managing this more clearly and consistently. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And Joy, just so that, thank you, you raised your hand. And Joy, I also, I'm going to unmute you. Looks like you might be self-muted. Joy, also just to be a little bit clear when I say it was an error, to elaborate on that, there had been no direction from either myself or council not to make payment to SFC. More importantly, even though we had not received a hot payment from the hotel, as many of our residents know, we have a significant amount of hot fund reserve. And so even without the payment from the hotel due to COVID, we certainly have the money in hot fund account to support all of our hot fund commitments for this year. So that's the longer answer to that question. And could you respond briefly to Miles Fox's question?
Sure, yes, and thank you, Mayor, for the clarification. So yes, one thing with marketing, and I think we saw that from the presentations, that marketing these days is very different than I think it's been in years past, and a lot of the marketing that we have put forth is a pretty small kind of footprint, if you will. So one of the marketing channels that we went with was Waze app. So basically people who are driving near in Sunset Valley or within a certain proximity of the market, an ad would pop up. And so a couple reasons why certain ads don't have the logos. One, when you're doing an ad that's the size of your screen, to put messaging that's going to resonate with what you're trying to get across. So what we're trying to get across is for folks to go to the market. It's difficult to have multiple logos. And so that's one. And then secondly, we have unfortunately not been able to get logos from the hotel. We've reached out to the general manager and we're unable to get the Holiday Inn hotel logo, and same thing from city staff. We've also reached out to get the appropriate logos and have not been able to get those logos. And we did send an email to the city administrator today with this information, so it is definitely part of public record. And the last billboard that we put up, I believe it was last summer of 2019, it was a much larger ad space, so you'll see in that, I can send the image, that we did have the logo. So again, we want to certainly abide by that contract, and it's a little bit difficult when a lot of the ads that we're putting in are not necessarily billboard with large signage to fit all of that in. And so I'm certainly open to ways that we can be creative and adhere to the contract and at the same time get the logos that we need to do that, and also make sure that the messaging does what it needs to do in terms of attracting folks to Sunset Valley.
Thank you, Joy. And that makes sense to me. And even if I think I may have seen an email today where it talked about breach of contract, even in this situation, that's not what I would say. I would say it is a deviation from what was required under the contract, which still doesn't mean you can't. It just means it would need to come before council. So that example you just gave, it's really just a process that maybe the better way that we could have handled it as a community and as a city would be for you to notify us, and then we would put it on an agenda that says, hey, this is a deviation. Are we okay with this? But taking that example, please just build that into your next request. And if it means we need to expand the terms in our contract to allow for new types of digital marketing or other things, let's just make sure that it's in the contract. And then, of course, make sure that it still qualifies under hot funds with whatever those changes might be. Council members, we need to take action on this item so that we can move on with other items. Councilmember Rosengarten, you are self-muted, but you have the floor.
I agree with Miles Fox, and I'm looking at their ad right now in Edible Austin, and there's plenty of black spot where they could have put our logo for the Holiday Inn on their Edible Austin advertising. Also, I've always wondered and asked this in budget and finance, is there ever an opportunity that the SFC would be self-sustaining? Joy?
Councilmember Rosengarten, what do you mean by self-sustaining?
Yes, thank you.
That they would be able to make enough money that they would pay for their own advertising?
That's like asking the same question to JDRF. The reason that they request the money is because they can and it's there.
Again, the question is for Joy.
Certainly. I'm happy to send you our financial reports. You'll see that we are a solvent organization. We are a nonprofit, and because we have that status that's granted to us from the government, we provide a public good. And so what we do is we look for grants. We look for donations. We have some of our own revenue as well. That's why we charge stall fees, for example, for vendors at the farmers markets.
Thank you. And as I just said, I would add, just like JDRF, which Joy, that's why I mentioned you might want to clarify that for the community, which is your special use permit request is separate from your request for hot funds. I would assume that the farmers market, the money that we give you for marketing is not the end all get all for your entire organization. But if we weren't to give it to you, it might change how you market your farmers market, just like
That's
JDRF.
correct. That's correct.
Councilmember Ellett?
Yeah, I want to go. I'm in agreement with Councilmember Rosengarten, and also in agreement with resident Miles Fox. I think clearly we have to pay this bill. It's contractually obligated. But I running ads that don't fulfill the term of the contract is, to me, there is a way to resolve this. I asked Joy this question. Why didn't you come to us and say, hey, before I run this ad, I can't satisfy the requirement in the contract because of the following. I'm all for going by the contract. We owe him this money, and clearly I'm going to vote to pay him this money. But contracts work both ways. And if what Miles is saying is correct, then that is not working both ways. So I agree with Miles, and I agree with Councilmember Rosengarten on this. I am totally in agreement that we pay him this amount of money because that's contractually obligated. But maybe this is a conversation for future. How are we going to make sure that the money? Yes, we've now talked about the city administrator doing a review process on the bills. How do we do a process to say this is in keeping with the obligation? This matches the requirements of the contract. Who is going to be assigned that role?
Sylvia, could you answer the second part of his question, which I think we covered that earlier, which is Tanya, Susanna, and you would be the gatekeepers for compliance with the contract.
That's correct. That's correct. And Joy, the email that you sent earlier, you requested that from Sarah Wilson back last summer, and the email chain that I got shows that you got the Sunset Valley logo. You never received the hotel logo.
That is correct, and I have to go back and look at the details because I was forwarded those emails, but I didn't see the attachments. I think there was also some difficulty in, if I remember talking with our communications director, putting in the logo or having the correct file format. So I think what I'd like to clarify is we absolutely want to abide by the contract. We want to be good partners. We have done that. And again, I think with the way that ads are running these days, it's difficult to include, to adhere to some of those requirements in terms of the logos, and we absolutely want to do that. And I think, you know, the other thing too, for the when you don't get a response from someone, I guess there's only a certain amount of time that you're going to be able to wait if you've also got a contract and you're not getting a response from somebody to include that.
What item are you speaking to not having a response on?
I'm referencing that when we reached out to the general manager of the hotel, we didn't get the logo.
Right,
I think
you did have the Sunset Valley logo, and so it probably would be good to be responsive to Councilmember Rosengarten and Councilmember Ellett. Councilmember Rosengarten was specific to the Edible Austin ad. So in a situation where there is space and you do have the Sunset Valley logo, why wouldn't it be placed? And then to Councilmember Ellett's similar but a slightly different question, why wouldn't you clearly at that moment say, we have an ad we're about to run, it's not going to be compliant, what would you like us to do?
Yeah, I think those are absolutely great questions. I think the other thing that I would like to just share is with the change in leadership at the city administrator level, there's definitely been things that as we've been working with Sunset Valley in the past and we've done certain things and you have new people come in and they have new things. And I'm not saying anybody's you know, I take full responsibility that we weren't able to include those logos. I think in the past too, this wasn't something that either Sarah or Clay or council members also brought up, and so it wasn't addressed at that time. And so right now you guys have brought it up, we are addressing it, and we're doing everything that we can to go forward with, if we place an ad, absolutely. Like I said, the billboard that we placed last year had those because we had the space. And then if we have a smaller ad where it's really not gonna do what we want it to do from a communications perspective, getting the approval from the appropriate person at Sunset Valley for that.
Thank you. And yes, Clay and Sarah are not here. So I do think that there is a difference, that they probably were not paying as close of attention as they should have been. But certainly since Sylvia has been on board, I have seen what I have seen historically in my 11 years with SFC is that there is a communication gap. And so moving forward, it would be really helpful. Councilmember Ellett's example, that's a good one. If you know it's your job to know your contract, it's your job to know the compliance factors you need to meet based on the money that we're giving you. So you should be the one that's proactive in saying, we want permission to run a non-compliant ad. And so from this point forward, if you guys would please read through your contract, make the effort, send it to the city administrator. And if you really think there's a communication error, then you should be copying me, because I certainly have not been copied. Just as with this situation, I was not copied on any of the emails. So let's just make it better moving forward.
Absolutely.
Council members, do we have any additional comments from council members? Councilmember Medicus?
I'd like to call the question. It's getting close to 10.
Thank you. Council members, would you please cast your vote via chat, yay or nay, for calling the question and voting? And Sylvia, if you would please read the votes back.
Yes, Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Reitz, yes. Waiting on Councilmember Ellett.
Councilmember Ellett, we're just voting on call the question, which is just,
Council,
do you want to vote or not?
Ellett says no.
He does not want to vote. Okay. Motion passes. So we are now going to vote. All those in favor of the motion on the table, please cast your vote via chat. Yay for, nay against. And Sylvia, please read the votes back.
Okay, Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Just need Councilmember Gonzalez. Yes.
Thank you. And would you, because this is going to change what we do for the next request, the motion passes. Sylvia, could you please read back the motion that we just passed so that it's clear for those listening?
It's the motion to approve reimbursement payment to the Sustainable Food Center for the expenses of January 1st through March 31st in the amount of where's my amount?
$7,382.73.
Yes.
And the additional portion of the motion, do you have that, or does Regine have it, which is that we will not be bringing future invoices to council?
Correct. And then for the next allocation of hot funds next year, upon discussion, review the policy and bring back recommendations.
A policy. There currently isn't one.
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez, I have a friendly request for you. It won't upset me if you say no. We only have 10 minutes left. Item number 12 to me is very important because it involves providing direction to committees that are going to be meeting between now and the next meeting. Could we table your item until the next meeting, which is item number 9? Hold on, I'm unmuting you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
That's fine by me, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Council members, could we please have a motion and a second to table item number 9 until the next meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilmember Medicus and a second. Is that correct? Thank you. And a second from Councilmember Gonzalez. All those in favor, please submit via chat. Yay for, nay against. And Sylvia, if you would please read back the vote, and then we'll spend our last 2 minutes on item number 12.
Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes.
Great, thank you. So we are now at item number 12, which is discussion and action to provide direction to staff and committees regarding business support activities. There is no backup here. This is an item I'm sponsoring. I'm asking for something very specific. Council members, please, this is a great opportunity. Just make a motion that says what you do want committees working on and what you don't want committees working on. In my opinion, the only thing committees should be working on for the rest of this fiscal year is budget, or if council wants to provide a very specific project, that they be very clear on what that project is. Councilmember Rosengarten.
One of the things I don't want the P&E to work on is dark sky when we are trying to help the retail look open. And so maybe that would be something not to work on in the next year. We want the retail to get the best help they possibly can get. So right now, no changes of making it even darker in the retail center.
Councilmember Medicus.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to see no new projects come forward for the rest of this fiscal year.
Amen.
Hello?
Hey, she said amen.
Especially since we, on April 7th, took such deep cuts and went to a essential services only. And I'd like to see that across the board for all accounts. And I agree that we should be focusing on fiscal year, which I'm calling the recovery year. And I think that we need to move forward and look at that. And if anything were to take place, I would think it would be some essential service that we look at for this year, and the projects that we talked about, like the lift station.
Thank you. And so if that were a motion, I hear a motion to have no new projects for this fiscal year.
That's correct.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion, and do we have a second from Councilmember Rosengarten?
Did you
second that? Sorry, that was a question.
I will second that, yes.
Thank you. And so, Councilmember Medicus, your motion is to have no new projects be worked on by committees or to come to council for funding during this fiscal year. Is there anything that you or the second would like to add to that motion before I open it to further discussion from council members?
I want that to be included for all of the funds.
And Councilmember Rosengarten, do you agree with that?
Now, we just got done hiring a marketing firm. Are you realizing that they're going to hit the ground running?
Oh,
But
yeah.
that will be coming, and that's coming to council,
Yeah.
Councilmember Rosengarten. That's not a committee project.
Okay, so then I agree with that.
So no new projects coming from, again, this agenda item is just about direction to committees. So the action is no new projects from committees to be funded for this fiscal year, and that includes anything funded from any of our different funding sources. Anything that the two of you want to add before I move to the next council member? Councilmember Ellett, you have the floor.
Thank you. CD right now is working on primarily on the budget, the 2021 budget, and they have submitted that in its first iteration to the city administrator. They are also working on a back to life grand reopening. We are alive post-COVID opening plan for the shopping centers. I think it's needed. I think it's a good use of money. They don't have all the details yet. They have incorporated a representative from the Arts Commission on that as well. The question I have is, when will the shopping centers be open? Is that an item that could come into this budget this year or next year? So I don't know how to respond to that. If the shopping centers,
when are the shopping centers open?
Yeah. I mean, when we talk to Councilmember Medicus and I talk to the two stakeholders, property managers for two of the shopping centers, they don't know when they would like this. They don't know when they're officially back to full steam. They don't know when this would have the maximum impact. We certainly don't want a grand reopening when half the stores are at limited capacity or whatever. So whilst I think this could happen this year, and I would welcome it, it could also happen next year. So I don't know how we handle that. So I think.
So this motion, so this action would be, and this is part of what I wanted to do, is to clarify specifically for CED. One, don't call it a grand reopening. Bring options to council so that they can actually make a decision of what is the event. But aside from that, this is about funding. And so to the point you just made, there's too much unknown, and the fiscal year for us ends in September. So really what this is saying is we would not be funding an event, whether it's called a grand reopening or something else. We would not be funding that in the remainder of this fiscal year. So that would be something that would be planted into next fiscal year, or, as you stated, at some point when the retailers can actually say it makes sense to do an event of that sort at this time.
I agree with that sentiment, Madam Mayor, and I'm not trying to be difficult here, but if all of a sudden the stakeholders say, "Hey, August, we're back on full stream," how would we handle that? Would we choose not to do it?
Yes, we would not do it in this fiscal year, and so your committee could still be working on what type of an event. For me personally, I would prefer to see the marketing firm also come on board and weigh in on what, if we're going to fund an event for the shopping center, what should it be called? What should it be themed? What should it be budgeted at? What type of activities should we be doing? And to allow CED to, use their value, use that value resource in planning an event and bringing it to council for funding.
Yeah, I agree with that comment about using the marketing firm as a resource. We desperately need it, and I'm glad we made a motion tonight to move ahead with a marketing firm. So
this would just be for this fiscal year. This would be just to not fund any new projects, including events or activities for this fiscal year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Councilmember Rosengarten?
Could the grand reopening be without spending city money, where everybody just goes out and they do a day event, they market to Impact News saying, hey, today is a big day for Sunset Valley, everybody's getting out and shopping local, eating local, and then Impact News captures a couple pictures, puts it in Impact News, we get some free advertising. Could something like that happen without spending money? Thank you.
Yes, but that's outside, thank you. That's outside the scope of this motion unless you want to change the motion to give that specific direction to CED, which is to create an event that has no funding source. Councilmember Gonzalez? Councilmember Gonzalez?
Mayor, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. It just wouldn't unclick. I just want everybody to remember that we're on a statewide, well, certainly a countywide lockdown till April 15th. And when I hear dates being floated before April 15th, it certainly gives me pause.
August 15th. You mean August?
I'm just right. I'm sorry. I meant to say August. I'm sorry. August 15th. Thank you, Mayor. August 15th. And it certainly gives me pause that people don't seem to be aware of that in discussions that I'm listening to. And just today, even our governor, who doesn't want to lock down the state, is saying stay at home, and we just peaked our top numbers. So I just want everybody to, it's like, yes, we want sales, but we also have to be aware that we're in the middle of a coronavirus, and the idea of the city itself during this time saying go out in mass and do that is not responsible, in my opinion. And so, yes, and I have to say, I was there on Sunday, and the shopping centers were packed and on a Sunday. And so, we are doing well, but we have to be aware of what our policies are during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. I'm certainly aware of it, and we will be doing well with those crowds until we have 16 cases of COVID in our shopping center, and then that will be the news story for Sunset Valley, which is not what we want. Councilmember Reitz?
Yes, Mayor, are you unmuting me?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I would say a couple of things. One is I would like the committees to focus clearly on their budgets. I was a little disappointed in the Planning and Environmental Committee meeting the other day when they were looking at services and maybe charging some fees for services instead of providing them for free. And they kind of punted and said, we'll let the budget committee determine what that should be. And the budget committee's got a pretty full plate. And so I really would like committees to dig deep and, you got to kind of put your name out there and say, yeah, let's do this and make those hard decisions. And so that's really where I would like to see the focus of our committees. The second thing I don't want to lose sight of is the lift station. I don't consider that a new project since it was budgeted, but I want to make sure that gets accomplished this year as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reitz. The lift station, similar to the question that Councilmember Rosengarten brought up about the marketing firm, I will ensure Sylvia is going to put it in her next admin report, and from there, I'm certain I will or one of us will sponsor it So that will be a council item. So we don't need to worry about that being deprioritized. And I also would agree with the sentiment you just gave, which is budget and finance. They've already, for those of you who were in their last meeting, you actually could hear Michael Francis as the chair of that committee. There was a very disappointing moment in the meeting where they all realized, wow, we just made cuts for 3 hours, and it's clearly, it's going to be difficult. So I agree. Committees need to take it seriously, and they need to not take the out of we'll charge fees, or we'll just get rid of subsidies, or we'll hire people. There needs to be real thought into making cuts, even if it's just, as Councilmember Medicus said, just for recovery year. But there needs to be a very sincere approach from each of the committees to do that. Councilmember Medicus.
I just, for clarity, wanted to make sure that I was, my intention is for any project that is not already in our scope of work or on our list. So there are some projects like the lift station and some, the Gabion project, those are already on our plate. I'm talking about anything that would be new.
So Councilmember Medicus, again, the context of this item is only for committees. So this only applies to committees bringing recommendations to fund projects. So this doesn't relate to any budgeted projects that would come directly to council.
Okay, just want to make that clear.
Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Gonzalez, you have the floor. If there's anything else you want to add. Councilmember Rosengarten, is there anything else you need to add?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear, because I thought I understood the motion to be, and this is one of those important things, that anything that was in sort of the previous budget, that people could be talking about that, it's new things that I thought we were doing, because I think we are talking about what things we're going to be bringing back. I think committees do need to talk about, you know, what we might do in terms of like essential service type levels coming back. So I just want to be clear what we mean by this, because I hear you saying, you know, like this $50,000 project that CED was talking about, that would be a new thing. Something that we already had on the budget that we're now reprioritizing. I think that's an okay thing to talk about. So I want to be clear what it is we're talking about here.
We're talking about projects. So a new project. So that would be a new event, or another example I would give is public safety committees and talking about a neighborhood watch program. I don't know. I actually wasn't in their last meeting, so I'm not sure. But an example to correlate with that would be you can bring that project forward for approval, but not if it also has a budgetary request. So you have to bring it forward. Or to Councilmember Rosengarten's point, you can bring us a shopping center event. It just cannot have a budgetary request with it.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
Just for this year.
I just want to be clear. Thank you.
And council members, we are now at 10:05, so we need to vote and close the meeting. I'm going to, Councilmember Medicus?
Oh, I was just going to call the question, but.
Okay. Council members, I don't see any other hands raised. I'm going to call the vote right now. All those in favor, please submit your vote via chat. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Okay, Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes. Councilmember Reeds, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes.
Great. So council members, you all voted unanimously on that. Motion passes. Since you were all liaisons to committees, there should not be any confusion at the committee level. You should be able to go to your next meeting and clearly report to the committees. We are to work on next year's budget. We are to work on essential services. We are not to bring new events or projects during this fiscal year. Council members, do we have a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Medicus?
So moved.
Councilmember Rosengarten?
Second.
All those in favor say aye or submit your vote if you don't have the ability to unmute yourself.
Councilmember Reeds, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned at, motion passes. We are adjourned at 10:07.